mentioned earlier on when we were talking that you also did some matches for WCW, which I'm going to guess is before you were signed by WWE.
Oh yeah, a long time. Yeah, because I started out when the territories were still in existence. So I went around and was working, and then they started fading out, and then that meant, and then Sheik had his stranglehold over Ohio and Michigan, parts of West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky and Virginia, Western Pennsylvania. All of his territory in Michigan was wide open, and everybody wanted that territory. So, Ole knew of the territory and wanted to come up and start running it. And TBS, Turner Broadcasting was running Georgia Championship Wrestling, WCW. And so they started running tours going up into Ohio and Michigan and the old Sheik's territory. And whenever they would come up, the Murniks would run the towns for them. And the Murniks needed, a couple local guys or whatever, and I would get booked working on those at that time. Eric Bischoff contacted me, which was a whole weird thing. I love Eric. Eric and I worked in TNA together, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. From my standpoint, it was such a weird thing because I'll never forget it. I was contacted when I was in Smoky Mountain, and Eric Bischoff, Jeremy Borash is the one who first contacts me. And I'd never met Jeremy or anything like that. And they arranged this a dark match that they want me to come down and work. I'm like, okay. So I fly in to Atlanta. Scott D'Amore was down there at the time, which was good because I could, he was, bringing guys over to center stage so they could do, enhancement talent. So I fly in, and Sandy Scott, who had worked for the Crockett's and stuff for years, tells me there's a train that you can take that'll take you to the CNN Center or wherever it was, and that was the hotel they were putting me up at. I fly in, come in, check in the hotel, wait for a couple hours, never hear from anybody. I finally called Janie Angle, who was who had set things up for me, was the assistant there at WCW. She's like, oh yeah, you need to be at center stage tomorrow. What time? I wouldn't have known. Nobody contacted me. Nobody told me. So I call, D'Amore, get a ride with him over to center stage because I don't know how to get in the building, no nothing. Get there at 1 o'clock, literally sit there for hours. Nobody talks to me. Nobody says a word to me. Couples, some of the boys say hi. I say hi to them. And I come from, the school of you're in a new locker room. You go find a corner, you sit down, you shut up. Stay out of the way, Don't go around trying to be a locker room lawyer and teaching everybody everything or talking to everybody. Shake hands, be respectful, and then sit. I wait until, Terry Taylor comes in, talks to me. Again, I love Terry. Briefly, and they're all busy. And I'm friendly, talk to everybody. And then Pinzer comes in and tells me I need to sign a release. Or he doesn't even say release. He goes, sign this. Just shoves it in my face. I go, well, what is it? Well, you need to sign this if you want to wrestle. Well, can I look at it? So he goes, what? Like he gets offended. And I read it over and I sign it and I give it to him and he pisses off. He gets, walks off. Oh, Kevin Sullivan came in too and was like, what's the problem? What's the issue? I'm like, there's no issue. I just wanted to read what you have me sign. That's all. Penzer went and made it like it was a big deal, like I had caused this big stink. I just was like, can I read it? So sign that, get that done. I got to work with this kid. I can't remember his name, who literally sprayed Pam cooking spray on himself before he went out. I'll never forget that. So go out and have the match. I didn't do myself, probably.
I've actually heard of people doing that in amateur wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, they do. The Muay Thai guy put oil all over himself to make harder for Dan to grab a hold of him in UFC. And so, it was, if I'd have watched it today, I wouldn't book me. Fuck. So he had the match, come backstage. Nobody still talks to me, right? Finally, Eric Bischoff calls me in his office. I go, hey, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. I just want you to let know, because Jim Ross had contacted me right before I went down there. I said, I just want you to let know that they've asked me to come to Stanford next week. And he goes, oh, you owe it to yourself and your family. You need to go and hear what they have to say. I have to go do my pay-per-view, and when I get back, we'll give you a call. I'll go, okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was it. There was no discussion of money, no discussion of anything, that was the whole conversation. And I thanked him for, his time, and we were done. So I'd spent that whole day. And then the next day, I find my way back to the airport, fly home. So I don't hear anything from WCW until all of a sudden I get wind that, Jeremy Borash for some reason calls me and says that I went in and made demands for like a couple $100,000, or I wasn't going to work or something like that to Eric Bischoff. And I go, I never asked for any money. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. And this whole convoluted thing came about, and my behavior in the locker room and all these things that were just absurd, that never occurred, that were born out of partly because I asked to read the release before I signed it, and then Pinzer spun it into something that was far worse than what it actually was. And then I don't know where that conversation with Eric Bischoff came from, and I waited for 2, maybe 3 weeks to hear from them, to get out of, because I told Eric I would. And I stayed true to my word.
And then they brought you back to WCW, first as the Masked Assassins, I think, with the war. Instead of calling you the team you were famous as, the Powers of Pain.
Oh, that was I don't know whose idea. So when we came out there, me and Wall or Terry, we came out there, we thought they're gonna use the Powers of Pain. We come there, Kevin Sullivan, and no, we wanna go in a different direction. Okay, what direction? We wanna call you guys Super Assassin. I said, what? Super Assassin? You wear a mask? Just like the assassin. I said, okay, let's try. We never done it, but let's try. So, David, we came out with a Super Assassin, the mask, and we came out and the fans started calling Barbarian, Warlord, we know who you are. Oh man, that character was long for probably less than 2 weeks, so it didn't work out because when you come out with a especially mask and try to cover your character, it's good when fans don't know who you are. But when you come out, they know who you are. It's not going to work. So, and they took that out in about 2 weeks, and they let go of Terry. So it broke my heart.
You were part of the West Texas Rednecks in WCW, which was actually a popular gimmick. I loved it. It was one of my favorite gimmicks in WCW. What did you think about that gimmick?
Well, we were originally supposed to be heels, and when we came out and, with Kurt singing, we automatically became baby faces, and we were working with Master P and his crew, and Conan, and let's see, what's Ray? Anyway, we were working with all that crew, and no matter what we did, they came out being the heels, and they wanted to be the baby faces. So it's just, that's why we played on a few shows, and we didn't wrestle on a few shows. We just did like concerts, and it was definitely fun. It was fun to do, but it just worked opposite from what the company wanted.
Yeah, because you even came out with the second song. Do you think that could have actually become much bigger if they had just ran with it?
I'm sure if it had gotten more time, it would have, especially with the talent that was involved with me and Kurt, and Bobby Duncan was really good, and Kendall was good. So,
and I heard that Master P was making a ridiculously large amount of money, and his No Limit soldiers, who weren't even trained wrestlers, were making hundreds of thousands a year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And we were working with them.
So you were probably making. I heard one of the No Limit soldiers was making like $400,000 a year, which is really sad, actually. Because I'm sure Kendall and Bobby Duncan weren't getting that.
Yeah, they weren't.
What was Kurt Hennig like?
Well, Kurt was a really good friend of mine. And he just always joking, always smiling, always happy, and phenomenal in the ring. But he just had that monkey on his back. It just got him.
And I guess they put Virgil, who was kind of out of place in the Rednecks. Was that just to make it seem like a non-racist group?
Yeah.
Definitely didn't fit in the group. What was he like? I guess he didn't ride with you guys.
No, I don't know who he rode with. But, he was there, and the company put him there, and we abided by it. It wasn't, we were all friendly, we were all friends, but, we felt it too, that he just didn't fit in.
And like a guy like Virgil, to be honest, he's one of like a contract that WCW probably didn't even need, and they had so many guys like Lanny Poffo had the 3-year contract, and he didn't even wrestle once.
Yeah.
Do you think WCW might still be around if they didn't make mistakes like having way more wrestlers than they used under contract? Because I can't remember Virgil wrestling in WCW. Maybe he did, but he seemed to not talk or wrestle.
I think what happened in WCW is just you had let's see, I guess the prisoners were running the prison, so that was the way it is, and it just doesn't work that way. You got to have a boss, and he's got to have the say, and there's just no way around it. But there were just too many people in Bischoff's ear, and always guys trying to go over his head to upper management, with TBS, and it was just a constant jockeying game there. It went from being low key to the worst place to work.
What brought you to WCW? You're probably, I know from me being from Canada, I remember you well from WCW, and probably our international fans remember you best from that time. I guess it probably was Bill Watts that brought you in.
Yeah. He got the job as general manager, and he brought me in to, I don't know what he brought me in for, to be one of the bookers, I guess, because there was 4 or 5 of them. Greg Gagne, Mike Graham, me.
Maybe Flair. Or no, Flair wasn't back by that time.
But he was sucked anyway. He never really got in no booking committee. I mean,
No, I
the
heard
world's champion's different.
Yeah, I heard he wasn't very responsible as a booker.
No, or a person.
I heard that from other people that were on the booking committees that he would just disappear when everyone was there for a meeting. He would just leave for periods of time. Or they were, I won't get into it because it's hearsay if I'm not talking to one of them, but I heard he didn't really want to be the booker. So what was the booking committee like in WCW? Was it working well at that time?
Well, it seemed like Bill Watts was the honcho.
Yeah.
Greg Gagne, Mike Graham, that's 2 people who grew up in the wrestling business.
Right.
Bill Dundee. So there's 4 people that's been in the wrestling business, and then they had that was the main booking committee then. So I thought it worked all right. But Bill Watts is going to make sure that it works all right. It means his neck is on the line, so.
Now, one of the controversial things about Bill Watts' time as head of WCW was the push that Eric Watts got. What do you think about that whole push as a member of the booking committee?
That was before me or after me. I wasn't there when they were pushing Eric.
Oh, okay.
So I don't really know what that was. I think that was before me, when Bill first took the job.
I know Eric ended up becoming a really good wrestler, so it's unfortunate that his best run was before he was ready.
Yeah,
I guess.
before he was ready. Sometimes it happens that way.
Any memories stand out to you as an agent from WCW?
No, I just try to do my job and do whatever. I mean, it was all kind of laid out before you got there. I mean, from the booking committee or do whatever. So by the time you walked in the building, it was all just like a piece of paper like that. You knew what was happening. So this is this and this is that. And if you don't like it, go home type thing. So.
Were you doing the house shows too?
Yeah.
Going over the matches and observing them at the time? What would have been the job of an agent at a house show other than to make sure everyone's there on time, tell them the finishes, make sure the matches run according to times?
You've just named it all. Yeah. And every agent didn't show up. I mean, there may just be one or two at the town.
Okay.
We all didn't show up. The 3 or 4 of us. So usually just one per town per night.
How was the house show attendance in those days?
No, it was fair. We was doing mainly around Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, I actually read in Bill Watts' book where he speaks highly of you that he said that the company went from a huge loss to almost breaking even the year that he was running it, and he didn't really get a chance, like a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And you want to just tell us about your time in WCW? Obviously, they probably paid you well, but they were known as a kind of a disorganized company, and you went through probably the most amount of gimmicks of any wrestler in the shortest time period in history. Do you want to tell us about the time period, and also were there any of those gimmicks that you actually preferred? Was there one particular one that you liked?
Beefcake is definitely my favorite, and it's definitely the biggest of all of them. The problem with that time frame was that WWE trademarked my name, and technically I trademarked my name and licensed it to them, but they were somehow able to obtain a trademark on my name, and they were keeping me from being able to use my name, so we had to go outside the box, and they had to think up these man with no name, the Butcher, the Booty Man, the Zodiac, and then eventually the Disciple, the NWO. I mean, the NWO changed the whole face of wrestling. Once again, guys, coming in, taking over with a great idea, challenging the business, challenging everybody, doing things that nobody ever thought could have been done. I don't think I was really ever used to the potential I could have been used for. There was a lot of things going on there. Guys in the office, people inserting people's ear. Eric Bischoff running the business. Whatever qualified this guy to really be running a multi-million-dollar company and being in charge of this kind of talent. I never saw any indication, period, what qualified him to be doing it. But there he was, and he had his little clique of guys that that he hung with, and certain guys were taken care of. I was fired. I got fired twice by fax to my house. Oh, you're fired. I'd be on the phone. Hulk would call, hey, come over, let's work out. I was like, all right, I'll be in a little while. Oh yeah, by the way, got fired again today. What? Yeah. Oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Boom. It was, but it's a little disconcerting to your family. Like your wife. I come home to find my wife laying on the floor, crying, kicking and screaming because the fax says you're fired. I just got built my house up, spent a lot of money, invested money and everything, and relied on my job to keep my family. I had a daughter to keep my family going, and now suddenly just like out of nowhere, you're fired for no reason. So those were difficult times, but it doesn't kill you; it makes you stronger.
And many people don't remember this, but you managed the amazing French Canadians in WCW, which of course was the Quebecers. They're better known as the Quebecers. Any memories on that and the way that they were used in WCW, which was pretty poorly?
They didn't think they were used well, but I'll tell you something that was happening then. They were not using any finishes where there were disqualifications, run-ins, things. They wanted a winner every night. And if you watch Vince's program today, you see they pretty much give you winners. And they avoid all that other stuff. At that time, they were doing that. So those boys had a real good contract. They were making money, and so was I. And I saw two guys that wanted to be used better. But sometimes, you know, when you're making real good money and you think you wait on that opportunity to be used better, and so I spoke to those guys about it. Again, I used my old timer stuff. Hey, boys, now you listen so much. And probably the final night that we did business, I just loved Jock Ruggiero. He's a close friend of mine. I used him in my territory as a young boy when he was finding it hard to get work and get along with guys that I thought he was great, and I used him and I treated him well, and I got my guys to treat him well. And so I had a background with Jock. But Jock wanted to go talk to him, and we were in Chicago about a finish that they wanted him to put the Harlem Heat over in the middle again, and Jock wasn't going to do it, and so I took him up to the top of the what's the big building there? The basketball building, huge. They had a big sign.
United Center.
United Center. We're up on the top of there, and I'd set him down, and I said, "Listen, Jock, you do not talk to the office tonight. There's a lot going on. I know." And I said, you don't talk to the office. And, yeah, well, I'm not happy with it. It's not the night. Tonight's not the night. Don't do it. So Pierre's there, and he says, no, don't. Jock, listen to him. So I make Jock promise me that you won't go talk to the office. We'll just do this. We're going to do it. Tonight's important. We're going to do it. United Center, sold out house. Don't mess with this. And so later on in the evening, I see Pierre. I said, where's Jock? And he says, I don't know. I said, I haven't seen him in a while. Where is he? Gone. So, oh. He's in the room with the hierarchy, talking to him. 2 weeks later, we all get our notice. And I was in WCW for 7 years. I could have been with somebody else. And you know, but I had a good run. 7 years is good, a long time, but you know, and I had Jock at my home the other day. He's a dear friend, and he knows. You know, after it was all over, I gave him a call. And I didn't run him over the grill for it. I just said, well, you know what? It happened, and now it ain't happening no more. And he was like, I'm sorry. I just wouldn't listen. I said, no, you didn't listen. And here we are. I got a real long notice because I had a lot of background there. They got a real short one. So
it wasn't even a year, was it? They were supposed to be there for 3 years, I think.
No, they were. They had 3-year contract, chance to put away some serious money, but some people. And you know what? I had Jock, like I said last week. I had Jock as a visitor at my home, and we sat and talked, and Jock sees it. He absolutely sees it. He says, "Oh gosh, dog, man. Son of a gun." We say, well, we look back on it. Those were the days. and you just pass it on up. There's no hard feelings about anything. That I look at that kid today and say he's a full-grown man and smart as a whip. And so I don't criticize 1 ounce.
At first it was fun. We were having a blast. And then just little things started happening. I remember one time we were in Tupelo, Mississippi. It was sold out, and we never sold out Tupelo, Mississippi. And the main event was Sting and Randy Savage against Hall and Nash, the Outsiders. Well, back in the day, everybody carried their music on cassette tape. So, and I don't know that I've ever told this story, actually. So, I was in charge of setting up the music, and usually the guy was at ringside, so I had some control, but this guy was in a booth way up there. So their tape was usually the tapes were one-off tapes where it was just that one song that the company would give me, that the theme song they did. Well, they found some cool song that they thought sounded cool. It was like a rap, kind of bluesy song, but it was in the middle of like a full cassette tape. So it was like, you remember cassette tapes, right? A lot of people watching this could be like, what cassette tape? So it was like side A, cut 3. So I prepared it, side A, cut 3, and I told the guy, when I point to you, play side A, cut 3. Well, you put in side B. So the wrong music is playing. So I'm trying to get on the headset and a microphone and a walkie-talkie to fix it. Well, by then, he if you remember the way cassette tapes go, by then he had changed the spot because he put in the wrong side. This went on, and this was a house show. This went on for like 20, 30 minutes. I'm not kidding you, trying to get their song. And I guess, I wasn't there, but I guess at one point, Sting said to those guys, dude, just go out.
It was Hall and Nash.
Yeah, just go out. How long are we going to wait? And they said, but we need our music. And Sting said, it's only Tupelo, Mississippi. Well, Hall and Nash went back to Eric and said, this is the reason why you guys have done so poorly, because you don't value, you think it's only Tupelo. Sting didn't mean it like that. But Eric gave a whole big meeting to everybody this was on a Saturday, that Monday at Night Show, that I don't care if it's a show before 1,000 people, 10,000 people, live TV, if it was a house show, whatever, we're going to put on the greatest show we could, and I never want to hear it's only Tupelo again. I think at that point, Hall and Nash had seen the successes that Vince had, were trying to show the guys in WCW that there were things that they were doing that could be improved. But I think at that point that it might have, you had the mainstays in WCW, the Lugers and the Stings, and then you had the new guys coming in that are, and I think it might have started, wasn't any big fight. Everybody laughs about it now. It's only Tupelo. It's something everybody laughs about around the bar if Sting and Hall and Nash or whoever are around. But at the time, I think some feelings were hurt, and that could have started a lot of it.
My first day at work, after I got hired, the first day I showed up was the day that Paul Orndorff got in a fight with Vader. I showed up 2 minutes after they got in a fight, and I was like, holy God. I'm still from the suburbs of Marietta, Georgia. Went to private school. Now I'm in the wrestling business, and I show up in the locker room, and Paul Orndorff just beat up Vader. And I looked at Vader, and he's sitting there with an ice pack on his face. His face is looks like a big giant herpes sore or something. Like he's all puffed up or whatever. It's just so he's just a mess. I was like, and I was thinking to myself, guy, because I wasn't like I was an amateur wrestler or college football player or barroom brawler. I was thinking, Jesus Christ, if I screw up here, the guy's going to try to beat me up or something. I didn't know what the locker room culture was like. It's my first day in the locker room, and I'm walking in 2 minutes after Paul Orndorff was kicking Vader in the face. I'd seen one locker room fight my entire like 3.5 years before that.
Right.
And I'm like, man.
That was with Shane Helms, right?
The Kid Vicious.
Yeah.
Kid Vicious, yeah, that's great. And then hysterical. Did you hear that in the podcast that time when I told that story? I was like, I'd never he's a kid. You were Kid Vicious? I was like, that's the only thing. The only time I'd ever seen a fight was when Shane Helms got in a fight with my trainer at a show. That's the only thing I'd ever seen,
So I guess you realized that was like a rare incident after the.
Oh, of course, yeah. Because all the guys, once I got in the locker room, and you just realize this is kind of it's a brotherhood. You know how it is. It's just everybody's like we're all with each other. These guys are we're with each other. I wasn't married or nothing, but they're with us more than they are with their families.
Yeah.
You know, so you got the kind of that bond with everybody. You know, not everybody liked each other, but everybody always there was never any heat where like, you know, guys were gonna fight each other like after that.
Now, I guess you had a couple of WCW matches before you signed with WWE.
Mm-hmm.
Were they interested in signing you as well?
I had so much heat in WCW. Like I worked for, I did a lot of like Georgia Championship right through up with WCW. Like on my way to Memphis, I went to an open tryout for WCW. I was dropping somebody off because I was going up to Memphis, and Blackjack was there. He goes, "Do you want to try out or anything?" I go, "Oh, I'm booked in Memphis." He goes, "What does it matter? Go get somebody. Go grab somebody out of the crowd. Go ahead." So I did, and then I worked, and you know, everybody, I guess, they could bring whoever they wanted to work with. So I had to just grab the random guy. So when I did the match, I tried to do too much stuff, you know. I came up with this fancy baseball slide. I wanted to do something, but I ended up crashing myself in ropes, you know, embarrassing, right? So I rolled out, and I just jumped on the guy, and I boom, 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 came in and just finished the match with, you know, intensity on through. And then when I was leaving, you know, I was embarrassed. Like, I thought, I ain't gonna hear from him. Blackjack pulled me aside. He goes, "Hey, do you want to come to the power plant?" I said, "Well, I'm already booked in Memphis." He goes, "Well, what we wanted to see is what people did when they mess up. We knew everybody was gonna come with their choreographed match. We told them to bring whoever they wanted to work. You know, they all picked their matches, but we're trying to see what happens when it falls apart." He goes, we want you to come." He goes, I said, "Well, I'm already booked there." And he said, "Well, you can come when you're done there, come." And to his word, I called him when I was done. I didn't even go home. So when Memphis was done, I came down. I went to Georgia, and then I was in the power plant like 3 weeks, but my knees were already killing me by this time. I don't know how many years I worked by then, 8, 9 or something like that. I'm squatting and all this, and you know, just these guys like, I don't know. They were back then. They were just all monsters. They couldn't even. They tied up and about knocked you out. I mean, you get clubbered and tied up. You know, I don't mind being stung, but they were just like falling all over you. It was really bad. And then one night they asked me to come to the Omni, and they had me sign like contempt to a contract for a year. We want you to come in, but didn't read it or anything. They were like, "Hey, just sign this. We want you to sign for a year. Blah 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 blah. Just don't quit the next day." Like, okay, I won't. I made a mistake asking. This goes to the weight thing again here. So I made a mistake and said, why was I in there with these guys? Why did I have to go through all this? "Oh, you were fat." Well, I had already lost like 30 pounds. Like starving in Memphis, you know. And he goes, "You're still kind of fat, but we make sure you got all your ducks in a row." I literally went back. Luna was in the hotel, and she goes, I said, "We're going home." She goes, "Oh, what happened?" I go, "Oh, I got a job." She goes, "Then why are we going home?" I said, "They call me fat." She goes, "Oh, okay." She knew that was the only button she could push on me to get me upset, is to attack the weight thing. You know, that's probably why I say it bothers me so much people say that, because they never said that to me, you know, when they let me go or anything. But yeah, so I actually I left the very next day and went home. Didn't come back, and then I went back to you know, try to get back in there later on, and it was just like, no. Then they did let me do jobs and stuff, and then stuff like that. But yeah.
And other than Goldberg, no one ever really became a star from the power plant, did they? That was a main.
No, there was those Ice Trains and all those guys were there. There was just some powers. There was just all those big guys. I don't think any of them came out of there. Like somebody's son was in there. They were just no. Yeah, it was rough in there. All you had was Sarge yelling, "Squat, squat, squat, squat."
Sarge, who
Buddy
really
Lee,
never made it that far, other than I guess his best position was the power plant training.
Right. Yeah, training there probably. Yeah.
Apparently, he chased Batista off too. Batista did a tryout, and Sarge told him he'd never make it. So.
And I guess you had a contract in WCW in later years too, didn't you?
Yeah, I had one. Actually, Hogan approached me and asked me. This was in '97, I believe.
And
he talked to Eric, and they brought me in for a while.
Yeah, according to the internet, they said you were off and on there from '96 to '98. I don't know if you were under a contract that whole time.
I was a contract, yeah.
They just rarely used you, I guess.
Yeah, actually, it was a blessing in disguise. I mean, they never hurt me. If I did a job, it was for a main guy, or I could set the job up the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
And Lex Luger and Randy and stuff like that, Savage. And then they brought me in and put me over on a bunch of matches too. So it was a good situation. I got a paycheck every 2 weeks. Plus, being they didn't use me that much, I started working independents. So I was working independents, plus I was on the big satellite TV. And so it worked out good for me, but they eventually let me go. But I had about a year and a half, I think, on it.
How was the atmosphere in the dressing room in those days?
There wasn't much of, and everybody was kind of like, they're on a contract, and I got along with everybody, but it was a little different. But I wasn't really on the road with them. I would show up and do a big show at Arena for them where they were televising it, and then did a couple of pay-per-views. But usually I was at where they would do the WCW Saturday night, which they would tape at Universal Studios. So I kind of like the only time I would really see the other guys. So I wasn't actually on the road. So it was a good contract. I could do my own thing.
And they used you, unlike Lanny, who I think just sat out his whole WCW contract.
Yeah, that's good though. If you can get money, pay you for sitting home, I enjoyed it because I only had to go to Orlando once in a while and wrestle, and they kept me beating guys, and then I'd tip my hat and let Randy Savage go over Lex Luger. The Lex Luger thing was good, where I pinned him and he snuck up behind me and put the backbreaker. I mean, it's stuff that when I know I have to do a job, I like to look like it could have went either way, and they let me do that.
Towards the end of your career, you were a manager in WCW. What are your thoughts on your time there and the company?
Well, anything that would prolong your time in wrestling in general is a good thing. But the managerial part of wrestling, I never really cared for at all.
And you were also, I guess, there to look after guys like Vader and Sid, from what I understand.
Yeah, there's various ways that those guys could get themselves in trouble, and in general, it was just prolong my being in the wrestling business.
So by the time you had that Undertaker match on WrestleMania 8, was the deal with WCW already in place?
Yeah. Well, it hadn't been signed yet, of course, and unfortunately for me, I negotiated one hell of a deal, a multi-million-dollar deal, and then I leave the WWF, and I have to wait 90 days, and within that 90 days, Bill Watts went into power at WCW, and he tore my contract up in my face and laughed at me. Because he knew that I'd already quit one place, I couldn't go back. And so now, instead of getting the big money contract, I got fucking peanuts, man. Fucking peanuts. And that didn't last long. Because Bill Watts, in his great thinking, thought that it would be better to destroy Jake the Snake character. That would make WCW better. No, it makes it weaker because you just killed off a guy that could draw you money. And he banned the Snake. When he banned the Snake, that's when I went into rehab, and he fired me and took all my money, and I wound up getting him fired.
So you left WCW. Was that you leaving, or were you let go, or a combination of the two?
I left.
And it was just you didn't like how you're being used?
With Watts, well, the thing with Watts was once I sued WCW, that was the end of my time there, But I wanted to sue Bill Watts and get him fired, and that worked out.
So were you the one that brought up the racial comments?
No, I brought up the fact that Bill Watts had a payment plan there where he would pay you half your guarantee and then he'd hold your money for 90 days, half of it. And at the end of the 90 days, if you performed the way he thought was right, he'd let you have the rest of it. That's bullshit, man. You know? And so whenever he had the snake banned, I was furious. Now I see what they were doing. They're going to destroy the character and destroy me. You know? And that wasn't going to fucking happen. So I talked to my lawyer. My lawyer says, well, this Watts is a loose cannon. He said, what would happen if you went into rehab, checked yourself into rehab? I said, fuck, man, he'd fucking fire me in a fucking heartbeat and take the rest of my money. He said, well, let's do that. So we did that. And of course, right from there, we went to Equal Opportunity Employers and said, look, you know, we're trying to do the right thing. You know, we're looked up to by little kids. We wanted to get clean and sober. And this fucking guy is punishing me for that. So that's how I got the money back.
And is there any particular reason why you didn't go back to WCW in the years after Bill Watts when Eric Bischoff was throwing money?
Yeah. Ted Turner has a policy that if you've sued him, you can't work for him.
Okay.
So I fucked myself, didn't I?
I understand at the point where WWE was still giving you your severance pay that you were actually a consultant for WCW at the same time.
Yeah, when I came back home from New York, and you know, I thought Vince would maybe pay me for a couple of weeks, and it just went on month and month and month and month. Well, after about a month, the first month, I called and I said to the HR person, and I forget the name, I said, I'm no longer at WWE. You're still sending me checks. Yeah, well, I asked Vince about it, and he said to keep it up until he said otherwise. So 1 month became 6, and I called back again, and they said, yeah, Vince knows you're getting the checks. I said, well, business must be good. He said, yeah, it is. So about that time, Eric Bischoff called and said, you're no longer with WWE. Would you be interested in being a consultant? And I said, what all does that entail? Because if it's coming to Atlanta, I'm not interested. And he said, no, just I'd like to have you as a consultant where I can talk to you on the telephone and toss ideas about. And I said, well, let me call Vince because he's still paying me. So he said, okay. So I called Vince and I said, Vince, they want to pay me a lot of money to be a consultant. Number one, if you don't want me to get involved, I certainly won't. Number two, you're still sending me your checks, and I don't feel right if you give me the go-ahead to keep getting, your checks. And he said, well, first of all, you helped me at a critical time in my life, and I'll pay you as long as I want to, because I appreciate you. He said, the second thing, the quicker Ted Turner runs out of money, the quicker this goofy war will end. So Eric Bischoff or anybody at WCW is not going to listen to you anyway. So take their money. I said, okay. So I called Eric back and told him, yeah. So he sent the paperwork up. No, he came up. Eric came up here. Flew up. I picked him up at the airport and we came to the house. And made the deal and signed the little contract as a consultant. And Vince kept sending the checks for another 6 months. Finally, I said, this is not right. And I called the lady back and said, I'm going to quit cashing these checks, so quit sending them. And they did. Eric called me. He wanted me to talk to Hogan about switching him heel to Hollywood Hogan.
Okay.
And Eric was afraid that Hogan would say no. And I said, he's not going to say no. He said, well, will you call him and talk to him about it? So I called him. And I said, you know, Terry, they want, I think it'd be good for your career to switch up and show them you can work both ways. They want to call you Hollywood Hogan. And he said, yeah, fine. I'll do whatever he wants. But I called Eric back. Eric was appreciative of that call. Crazy.
So did they ever ask your advice on anything business-wise as far as how they could save money or
yeah, Eric would call maybe once a month and nothing really stands out. You know, he asked me about what I thought about running head up against Raw. And I said, well, that's what I would do if I was running it.
So I guess the time you would have been there was, I guess, around the time that they first started Nitro, right up until
yeah, well,
Hogan's turn.
A while before they started Nitro.
Okay.
Maybe 6 months. And then, I don't know, I think I got paychecks for about 1.5 years.
Wow. Did you ever have to file any reports on their television shows or anything?
No, he would call, ask me what I thought. I was always politically correct. You know, he didn't want to hear it. I didn't like it any more than Vince wanted to hear.
How did you like dealing with Eric Bischoff overall?
Yeah, he was a little insecure. And I remember telling him when he started All the Talent, I said, but you know, you have to be political in that situation. Being a consultant, you have to really understand that generally the person hiring you doesn't want a consultant. They want a validation. So I would be very diplomatic and say, you know, Chrysler can run out of money, so can Ted. If I were you, I would be real careful that the talent earns their money or justifies their money. And of course they'd pay somebody $30,000 or $40,000 to stay at home. Crazy kind of stuff.
Did your contract just run out, or did you quit, or how did the end of that deal come?
Oh, isn't that funny? I'm trying to sit here and to recall. No, I do recall. Because Vince was calling, asking me to do some things for him that I perceived as a conflict. So I called Eric and I said, Eric, you really don't need me. You're doing a great job.
Because I guess Jeff was still working for Vince during that time, wasn't he?
That probably was a factor, yes. And, you know, I just remember that I didn't feel comfortable with the conflict. Linda McMahon called me once, I do remember this, and said, aren't you real close to the Steiners? Yes. Well, could you kind of back channel, tell them we'd like to talk to them? And I said, well, I can't right now, I'm working for WCW. And I called her a couple of months later, and when I wasn't working for WCW, and arranged them to meet the Steiners. They called Vince called me about meeting with Hogan about coming back, and I set that meeting up too. And because, you see, I had this real feeling for Vince McMahon Sr., even though he was dead. And I don't want that to sound self-serving, but it's just that Vince Sr. intervened in my life, and Eddie Graham, at a time that had they not, I wouldn't have been in the wrestling business. And so you know, there's not much I wouldn't have done for either man.
What was the difference between working an announcement job with WWE compared to the World Championship Wrestling?
The professionalism. It was just, WWE was just so much more professional. You just really couldn't, you couldn't even compare how different it was. In WCW, it's like nobody knew what was going on. They were just all over the place, where in WWF, everything, I mean, they had everything nailed down to a science. You know, they knew who was next, what was next, how long, you know, how much time you have, who's going over, what's going to happen, you know, particular camera angles, where WCW, it was just, they had no idea. They were just, you know, just doing it by the seat of their pants, you know. So they had, you know, WWF killed them in that standard.
What about the pay difference between the two companies with the same similar kind of work?
Same.
Same?
Yeah, pretty much the same.
And the ambiance or environment behind the backstage, was it the same or?
No, WWF was a little more intense, a little more professional. Again, WCW, it almost seemed like it was more of a, like everybody knew everybody. It was just another night. Where WWF, it seemed like this is business, because in WWF you got to understand that television is built to get you over, and if you get over, you make more money. And in WCW, I guess it didn't matter because you had guaranteed contracts, so everything was more relaxed and they didn't really care as much. So I think the WWF guys were a bit more hungry, and they treated it as such.
Did you ever wrestle Vader, who was also known for...
I did. I wrestled him twice, actually. Once for WCW, and one of his last matches, I believe, in New Jersey for this small promotion called Pro Wrestling Syndicate about 5 years ago. But yeah, Vader was okay. He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad at all. Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah. What was your favorite match from WCW?
Since I only had two, I had the one with the Nasty Boys and the one with Vader. I would have to say Vader, just because it was better than the Nasty Boys.
Was there ever any offer from WCW around the time Hall and Nash came over?
Not formally.
Nothing?
No.
Okay.
When it was time for the renegotiation, and WCW was starting to come up, where they said, you know, Scott and Kevin wanted to leave, and Vince could not match their offer, or didn't, financially just couldn't match what they were offering. And Scott called me and he's like, bro, we got you a sweet deal. I couldn't go down there with the mask, of course, because that's Vince's gimmick, nor would I want to, quite frankly. But we'll get you paid, we'll get you a new gimmick, we'll start you from scratch. So I literally went to Stamford, planned a meeting with Vince McMahon, and it was Bruce Pritchard, Pat Patterson, Vince, and everybody else. And I said, Vince, I'm 23 years old. I've been wrestling full time for years now. I'm coming into my own. Like I was starting to get good, starting to get damn good, and I don't want to waste myself away doing a meaningless gimmick. So Vince said, well, pal, we can't let you go. It's just, it's just going to look bad for us because, all our talent's going over there.
Just to quickly go through the Dungeon of Doom gimmick, which I actually liked.
Yeah.
Was that, I guess, Hulk Hogan had something to do with that? He wanted a group of cartoonish people.
Here's what it was. I manipulated that too because I had to get his faith because he was the one that suggested me for the job. I'll never forget, in Chicago, he had a black shirt on, Hogan. He was just going to do an interview. Black bandana, black crucifix on, and he comes out and the whole building's booing him. And Mean Gene was on top of things so strongly, he said, you can see it's a solemn mood tonight. The people are upset over the NWO, right? And I said, oh, I got to turn him now. I should have turned him as he came in. But I gave him the guys that he had worked with before, that he was comfortable around, that were easy to work for him. He didn't like to get touched. You and him would have been oil and water. He doesn't like, and these guys were his friends. Ed Leslie, the Shark, John Tenta,
Ming, I guess.
Ming was, Ming was looking out for him if they ever went out. Barb, and then that group kept on growing and growing and growing. A lot of times, and I look back fondly at it sometimes, but when I was doing it, I felt like I was coming out of the clown car, because I had been such a staunch shield that I've got all these characters around me, and it didn't work. But in the long run, it did because I talked him into turning heel.
When Hogan actually decided to turn, not decided, you convinced him to turn heel, he spent the night at your house.
Yeah.
Because you were afraid that he was going to change his mind.
Everybody was telling me, you can't do it, your merchandise will go down, your merchandise. I waited until the second match was on, I drove with him with his limo, and then when he turned, we all can go back and watch that tape. They had more trash in that ring than most garbage dumps do.
At what point did you become that close with Hogan that...
I knew him before he was in the wrestling business. I knew him when he played at the Rocket Lounge. I knew him. I gave him a ride one night. I worked in Dothan one night from Florida. And they sent me there. And he was on the card and he was drawing, but he didn't think he was going to get a break. I said, yeah, you're going to get a break and you're going to draw a lot of money. Because, again, I saw Billy Graham in him. I said, this kid's going to make it. And I think that's... Maybe he remembered that I told him that.
Can you tell the story about the monkey?
Yeah. Todd, this is past the statute of limitations. Dusty comes up with an idea, I'm going to carry a monkey on a leash. Well, the little bastard, every time they put, first of all, he was biting everybody before they put the leash on him. He's supposed to be a trained monkey. I realize now he's not trained. The handle is jumping back. He bit the handle. So they give him to me. I get him on the leash. First thing the little bastard does, starts humping my leg. I have to whack him in the head, right? So I'm supposed to be walking down the aisle with the monkey.
monkey jumps off the runway. I go to pull him up, snap. I'm dragging a dead monkey down the aisle. It was deplorable. I mean, and I wonder if, again, that if Dusty, you know, that was such a cartoon. And if it wasn't done for a pilot, it had to be done for another reason. You know, maybe he's going to show someone, look what I created. This is an entrance. We could do a TV show. But that killed Kevin.
So when you did the Oz character, who was running WCW at that time?
Dusty. Yeah. I have always wondered, was Dusty afraid that Kevin Nash was jacked? He's legitimately 6'10". You've worked with him.
Oh, yeah.
Is he 6'10"? 6'11"?
Oh, definitely. At least that, yeah.
Yeah. Now they put me in a rubber mask as the Wizard, give him a cone on his head, spray paint his hair gray. We have Janie Ingalls walking down like Dorothy, and that backdrop cost $100,000. It was, I don't know if Dusty wanted to make a movie, and this was his pilot to show some movie director, but it certainly didn't help Kevin. And Kevin, I mean, guys 6'11" that looked like Kevin don't come along every day. And Kevin's a very smart guy.
Probably one of the smartest in this business.
Absolutely. And I'm always have wondered if Dusty was afraid of Kevin.
And you ended up coming back to WCW after you guys got released, I guess, over that whole thing with Scott Hall.
Yeah.
How did you end up coming back? Was that Hulk?
No, that was just me. Came up with a version, and I brought a good friend of mine, Willie Nelson, in and see if he wanted to do something. Have Willie Nelson come back and said, "Oh, how about you?" I didn't know they were starting a hardcore division at the time. And they said they were going to throw me in on that. And, you know, I ended up being a world champion in the hardcore division 4 times. And we kind of started that back in the day when it was street fight matches and this and that and the other. But I'll tell you, honestly, to all the fans, that really wiped my body out. Right now, I'm in pain all the time, man. I'm hurting. Fingers don't close. My knee, need another knee replacement, my back and this. But there was that little 2-year stint there at the end with WCW because they weren't getting us stuff from the hardware store that can, you know, we were getting stuff from old buildings that the trash cans were cast iron trash cans. I threw Finley through a table and almost cut off his leg. The worst thing I ever saw in my life. He said, "Knobs, I'm hurt." His leg was hanging there like someone took a butcher axe.
Was that the junkyard match?
No, not the junkyard match. It was a match in Tupelo, Minnesota, just a hardcore for the belt match, and we were grabbing stuff from the back of the buildings. These were old buildings. The trash cans weren't the ones you buy down at the Home Depot down here, where they're aluminum and tins. They were real stuff. So this one was made with Formica, the face of it. And when he went through it, the night before, he didn't make it through. I think it was in Tupelo, he didn't make it through. So he rushed so hard the next night, and it went like a shotgun blew through it. All he saw was a round hole, it was shot from a cannon, and it cut him all up. And the one got his foot and almost cut his leg off. He had drop foot for a long time, but that is one of the most toughest son of a bitches ever in the world. I love him to death. He's a very good friend of mine, and didn't want no pain shots or nothing. He said, "Stitch me up, what you got to do," but it was horrible. If anyone would have saw the injury, it was that bad. And I got into it the next day with Bischoff, and Jimmy Hart grabbed me because we had to do something else. Because he said, "You're not going to blame this on WCW." I said, "Dude, you're not buying us the right stuff. We're out here every night. We're doing 280 days a year. bias to stuff that we've done to smash each other, where we're not killing each other every night. We're actually killing each other every night, you know, for the fans to do our thing. But, you know,
It would save the company money in the end on medical bills.
yeah, well, exactly. And Eric had his thing to say, and I was just about to strangle him. And thank you, Jimmy. That's our true manager, the hardest working man in show business, Jimmy Hartmouth of the South. I'll tell you.
When I was recouping with the knee scope, so I had a few months off, I got a call from one of the directors or producers that said, "Hey, Larry, we fired Jesse, and we got some pre-taped shows. Can you come down and do the color commentating for us while you're rehabbing? Because we're stuck." And I was, you know, under contract getting paid. Felt guilty after a while, sitting there for a couple months. So I said, "Yeah, I'll come down." I never did any broadcast. So I went down and did some color commentating over a few taped shows they had. And this one guy runs through the door, and he's going, TBS guy. He goes, "Son of a bitch, that was the best broadcasting I've ever heard. Did you ever think about being a color guy? I would love to have you do the color on these shows." And at first I was like, I'm trying to be Bruno Sammartino here. You think I'm Tony Schiavone? I was like insulted. And then I'm thinking about, but I didn't tell them that. I'm thinking, yeah, broadcaster. And then they came back, but that was in the days when it was a ridiculous money giveaway that the company had to give away, or people would get fired because they wouldn't be doing their job giving money away. It was insanity.
Yeah.
So they came back to me and said, "Hey, Larry." Now this was a job that now was like a day a week because I would voice over the tape shows. Nitro didn't start yet. And they came back to me with a thing and said, "Larry, we'll pay you, you know, here's a contract, we'll pay you this much money." It was well over 6 figures, to do the broadcasting. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna make more money working a day a week talking. Plus I'll be on all the shows, so I'll be getting publicity. And the other guys, 40, 41, are all getting hurt and getting phased out.
You don't have to travel as much, I guess.
Yeah. So I went, this guy's got to be insane. I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." So then I took it, and I took it under the terms like, well, can I be an employee? So they made me an employee. So that worked out great because I had all the benefits, the health benefits, all kind of stuff. I mean, it was a great company. So I had a 10-year run that was great. And I worked a day a week, and then when Nitro kicked in, I flew out 1 day a week. So it was great.
Working with Gordon solely as an announcer.
Oh, Gordon, the Dean? No, that was interesting. It was fun. They brought him into TBS, and Ted Turner loved Gordon. We'd be out there in the hallway having a cigarette. Gordon smoked a pack, you know, an hour. We and Ted Turner and Jane Fonda would walk by with her big sunglasses, and they go, "Hey, hi, how you doing, guy? Hey, hi, Ted," you know. He'd walk by, and then we'd go to Reggie's to have lunch, and I'd have a sandwich, and Gordon would have a drink and another pack of cigarettes. And then we'd go back, and he was a night off. Yeah, he used to be the one-man show, so it was easy. And I picked up stuff from him, but it was easy doing it. He was used to be a one-man show for years. That was a color guy. It was easy and smooth.
And I've heard he could drink a lot in Silvermane, pretty normal.
Oh, yeah, he was used to it. Yeah.
And another really famous, well, I guess right up there with one of the best ever is Jim Ross.
Oh, Jim was great. I mean, it's really too bad. If you listen to the announcing, I don't know what happened to it, but JR, I mean, if you watch Raw from some years ago and the Rock's flying through a table getting smashed, JR's having a heart attack. "Oh my God, get the EMTs, oh my God, everything through. I mean, he was great and get people all, I mean, the announcers, and I told him, I says, "You guys don't realize it's basically an underrated job," and I realized that when I was doing it. It's kind of an underrated job of importance, but all the hard work in the production and in the wrestling, the announcers are the ones that bring it to life. And you can see the visual, but when you hear the audio go with it, that's what brings it to life. And if you're not a good announcer, I mean, I'm watching stuff now with some guys getting killed laying to the table, and the announcers are talking about, "Hey, well, next week I'm going to be at that." And what the hell are you talking about? The guy you. So, I mean, JR was great, kind of like at the end. Schiavone was great. And, I mean, I think they need a little brush up on today's announcers, to be honest with you.
What would be your best advice to a wrestling announcer to become better, I guess?
Well, what they have to do is, it's the same thing I had to do. When I started announcing, I had to drop the Larry Zbyszko. I mean, I was a hated asshole. I couldn't announce as that because my job was to put the guys on TV over and make them like somebody, whether they were good guys or bad guys or hated. So what I had to do was I softened, but I approached it like a fan. And what the announcers today have to do is that they can't watch it like they're part of the business or they wrestled for 20 years. They have to watch it like they're a fan. And when they see something happen, because they've been in the ring 20 years, they can say, oh God, well, this is the way you put the pressure on. See it right there, that's what got me. And, and they have a credibility. But in terms of emotion, you have to watch it like a fan. So when something happens, you go, wow! I mean, I would raise my voice at certain times where if people weren't in the room, they'd hear the TV and they'd have to come back in the room to see what was going on because the levels of excitement changed. So that's part of working it too.
What do you think ultimately led to the end of WCW? It was a bad last couple of years.
It was a horrible year because they had the Russo guy in there, and the head of the company was an accountant. And what happened was Ted Turner loved it. If Ted Turner still had 51%, WCW would still be on. It should be on. It was the highest rated money. I mean, what happened was they sold out in the business deal to AOL. The idiots at AOL didn't want sports. They didn't want wrestling. They didn't want basketball. They didn't want the Braves. And part of their deal, and within their deal, Turner gave up more than 51%. And the WCW was just canceled. Now, it stayed there a year and a half or a year or so after it was really unpublicized but officially canceled because of the contracts they had with pay-per-view outlets and arenas, and so they had to keep going to fulfill the contracts that they had, but they were basically, the show was canceled. I knew it, Bobby Heenan knew it. We were already gone a year before WCW was over because we knew it, and then that's when it got so horrible because Russo didn't have a clue what he was doing. Arquette, and Goldberg, all the heat. I mean, he kept some of it, but it wasn't as good as it would have been.
They turned him heel.
Yeah, it was just stupid. And the accountant who was running the company, his job, until it was officially off the air, that year they had to kill, his job was to spend as little money as possible. Vince, when he took Russo, it was just some cheap price he took him, and he bragged to me, this guy, Bill, he goes, hey, I got one of the WWE's writer, man. I stole him right away. He wasn't even under contract. I said, Bill, he wasn't under contract because he ain't jack shit. He wasn't under contract because he's a nobody. What are you thinking? Oh, I can't spend money. I mean, it was
even Bret Hart. They took him when they didn't want him in WWE anymore.
Yeah.
What made you actually switch? Because I understand you took a pay cut when you switched over to WCW.
I did. I was looking to actually renegotiate my contract with WB. It was just a business thing. So when your contract runs up WB at the time, you had to give a 90-day notice. Didn't mean you were leaving. Just meant you wanted to redo your deal. You just didn't want to roll over. So I wanted to be able to do maybe some things in the fitness endeavor because the money back then, it was always good for me. But I thought maybe I could do some things outside of wrestling, workout wise, and make some extra money. Maybe doing commercials. I didn't know, but I wanted the flexibility in my contract. And so I gave my 90-day notice because I didn't normally do that. But Vince and I were negotiating through it. My 90-day contract ran out, but Vince and I had such a good personal relationship that we went on for months after that with the lawyers. It wasn't between Vince and I, but the lawyers were working that out, the language in the contract. And it was kind of dragging out a little bit. And I just had a happen chance conversation with Sting. I didn't even know they were going to start a new show. Right. And I told him, and it came up a conversation that
my contract was up and I was no longer under contract with WWE. He goes, wait a second. Sting almost like dropped the phone. You're working at WWE right now and you're not under contract? I go, no, my contract, I gave a 9-day notice and expired a couple months back. He was like, you're kidding me. I go, no. So he called Eric Bischoff and the rest is history. I ended up being the surprise guy on Monday Nitro in Minneapolis.
Now, Bruce told a different story, so I just wanted to get your opinion on that. He said that J.J. Dillon was continuously trying to get you to re-sign, and you kept saying you were going to and putting him off. And I guess that's why, in his opinion, J.J. may have had some heat with you after that. But
J.J. never mentioned that to me. We're good friends now. We see each other quite often. I'm not aware of that. I did most of Mama negotiations was through a lawyer.
Okay.
So if there were, JJ might have had a problem with what was going on in negotiations, because negotiations sometimes can be tenuous and frustrating.
Right.
I was a little frustrated, but really the opportunity with a new show that I didn't even know about, Monday Nitro, came up all last minute.
Right.
I'd never planned. I totally planned on re-signing. I wasn't putting anybody off at all. I was planning on re-signing with WWE.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because this podcast, I'm surprised you haven't heard about it, but it was all about you. They talked about your career for 70 minutes, I think it was.
Okay.
I listened to it on the way down.
Oh, I got you. But everybody's perspective can be different, right?
Yeah.
JJ's, he might have been very frustrated with my attorney.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to get the right language in there. My attorney was, not me. My attorney was the one guiding me.
Right.
It was just a business thing. But I definitely, I wasn't like leading anybody on, like negotiating with WWE, WCW at the time at all. That all happened in a matter of like a couple weeks. I went from thinking I was going to re-sign with WWE to walking out on Nitro in a matter of like a week and a half. It all happened.
And
that quick.
And you wrestled in New Brunswick, Canada the night before. Was that your last scheduled match, or was there other matches that WWE was expecting you to do?
Well, once again, I was not under contract.
Okay.
So I was on night-to-night basis anyways.
Right.
But but one of the disappointing things was I wasn't able to give notice.
Right.
That was part of the agreement, that Eric Bischoff wanted it to be a surprise if I came to WCW. And Eric Bischoff, I had heard, wasn't a big Lex Luger fan. So that's why he wanted to test was I full of myself? My reputation was being kind of arrogant. So he kind of thought I'll lowball him and see if he balks on the money. See if he really would like to come back here and work with us. I know Sting, you love him. He's one of your best friends. But, and Eric, I said, man, I'd love to be a part of that and get to come back and be with my best friend Sting, and got a new show going. So, and boy, it worked out good. But I definitely had great misgivings about Matsuda, the way he taught me in wrestling. It wasn't a thing of real character and integrity that I did with Vince, not giving me notice. And if I had done it over again now, it worked out literally good with me with WCW, I would have told Eric that I would have to give notice and talk to Vince. And if the stipulation was to just walk off his house show and the next night be in a ring with WCW, I would like to think I wouldn't do that. Now we all have things people realize behind the scenes, taking care of our family and taking the best opportunity, but I would have wanted to do it with character and integrity. And Vince and I were close outside of the ring. So that was, even back then, I had a lot of turmoil over that, doing it that way.
What did you hear from the WWE side? Because obviously there was probably still pay that they owed you. You probably had some contact after. Did you hear any feedback to what happened?
Yeah, they said, we're not going to pay you anything. So that was the feedback. You're with them now, and if you want the money, sue us.
Did you?
I did not.
I see.
I decided best to move on. I looked into what it would take to try, and to sum it up, it would have been a long line.
How much did they owe you?
Oh, I don't know. There was some pay-per-view money, and some marketing money, I'm sure.
The house show that you just.
I'd have no idea what that would have added up to.
Do you think the reason why you're not yet in the WWE Hall of Fame could possibly be because of animosity from that Nitro?
You know, I'm with the ambassador program now, so if there was animosity, I don't think I'd be an ambassador for WWE. So I don't know. It'd be a real honor if I ever get in. Someday there's a lot of great wrestlers that aren't in there yet. So someday I ever get it, it'd be great. If I don't, I don't. But it'd be a real honor if I ever do, of course.
I found one story in your book pretty funny, considering WCW's reputation, where they wanted you to fly to Atlanta on your own dime, and you tried to explain to them because all the flights were coming out of Atlanta. So I'll let you tell this story.
Yeah, and so, so I took the sabbatical to take care of Mandy. And I went up to what they affectionately called the Ivory Towers, met with Jim Hurd and Jack, I forget Jack's last name. I said, guys, here's what I have. And I just sensed they weren't thrilled about me not putting wrestling as the number one priority. And, even though I had a wife dying of cancer, I said, guys, I'll come back. You have my word, I'll come back. But I've got to do this. I've got to go take care of her. And when I came back, when I eventually did come back, things were never the same. I could just sense their attitude towards me wasn't the same. At one point, they really tried to bury my career. I mean, I lost I was a babyface and lost a cage match to Rick Rude in Minneapolis, Minnesota, my original hometown, right? Just right outside of Moscow, Minnesota, but no. But and Ole Anderson was the agent that night, and I'll never forget. I pulled Ole aside. I go, when they gave us the finish, I go, Ole, you've been around the business a long time. He goes, yeah. When's the last time a babyface lost a cage match? I just carried the finishes. I can't get a hold of anyone in the office. I'm not asking you to get a hold of anyone in the office, Ole. I'm a businessman. I'm here to do business. That's not good business. Now, I'm going to do it because I'm a businessman. But that's not good business, Ole. I mean, come on. Really? Seriously? And we don't even have an angle. And he's going over. And so I started getting the picture that they're going to try to, in a sense, kind of bury me. But Ivan and Don and others taught me well enough that even in those situations, how to still keep yourself over with the fans, regardless if the promotion is trying to do that. And then the whole flight, the air tickets. So they said to me, because they wanted all of us to move to Charlotte. I mean, from Charlotte to Atlanta. Well, several of us didn't. Flair didn't move. Arn didn't move. Barbarian didn't move. Ricky Steve, myself. Several. There's 8 or 10. Jimmy Garvin didn't move. And they're like, okay, well, you don't want to move, that's fine, but all of your airline tickets will be to and from Atlanta. Like, okay. So they'd send me my tickets, and that was back in the days when they actually were worth something. It wasn't the whole non-refundable and all that kind of stuff. They were full fare and, And I would get the tickets, and Atlanta to Cincinnati, Cincinnati to Atlanta. And I'd look at the ticket price, and I'd call the airline, and I'd say, hey, how much is it from Charlotte to Cincinnati and Cincinnati to Charlotte? And sometimes it'd be $100 less, sometimes it'd be $200 less, and depending on where the ticket was going. And I'm like, that makes no sense. I mean, they're wasting money. And I had those conversations with them. And I said, look, you're sending me a ticket for $350 from Atlanta to Cincinnati, for example, and I can get it from Charlotte for $225. I mean, I saved the office $125. You know what the response was? Oh, well, we're not changing it. It's insane. That's stupid. So I would go to the airport. I'd change the reservation, change the ticket, go to the airport, and they'd hand me $125 cash refund. The airline would. So I started making, and I'm not exaggerating this, I started making thousands of dollars in airline refunds because they refused to give me tickets flying out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm like, all right. It was probably one of the reasons WCW no longer exists. But I tried to do the right thing. I want people to understand. I tried to do the right thing. I wasn't hiding it from them. I told them up front, guys, I can save the office money. Just give me tickets out of Charlotte. They're like, nope. I'm like, all right. So that was some of the stuff they were doing.
Then we worked our way back, me and Jacques, as the Amazing French Canadian in WCW. But by the time we got there, Diesel, Kevin Nash, and Razor Ramon got there for NWO, so it was bad timing again.
Why did Jacques, was that all because he wanted the Hulk Hogan match? Why he decided to come back?
Yeah, yeah. The Hulk Hogan match was, he needed money at this time too.
Yeah. Okay, so, and what was with the Amazing French Canadian's name?
Why? They didn't want to use the Quebecer's name for lawsuit purposes, or the Quebecois name, or I don't know. Eric Bischoff came up with that, or his booker.
So I was there that night for that Hulk Hogan match, and that was a huge match on the card, but the other huge match on the card was you against the Giant, who's the Big Show now.
Yeah, the Big Show didn't want a job for me. I was supposed to get a big win there against the Big Show. He refused, and Hulk agreed to a job for Jacques because historical things too know that having the Rougeaus on his cards all the time, having a solid undercard for him being a main eventer all the time was important to him, and wanted to salute also the courage of Jacques for facing Dynamite Kid, who was the real bully, who everybody was scared of him, and having the balls to do that, and being there for, in his primetime undercard and all that. So he did that for Jacques, and probably giving a little shot to Eric Bischoff too, telling him that, he was Hulk Hogan and he could do whatever he wanted to do because Bischoff didn't want that to happen.
No, because I believe you guys lost your very first match against the Nasty Boys, which was your debut match.
Oh, that was another story because we were supposed to have a big win against the Nasty Boys for our debut match.
It was on Nitro, I think.
And Nubs, and he's very friend with Hogan, and he went to complain and he was crying at Hogan. Like, I love Nubs and Sags and Nubs. We works against them for an Alouette games, and they job for us, and they're funny and everything, but whenever they can use that power that they got with Hulk, they did it, and they did it against us, and we lost instead of winning. So our debut was the shits.
Would your highlight in WCW be your match with the Giants? Because I think, what was it, a double DQ or double counter?
Yeah, no, it was a shitty match.
Yeah. But what was it been one of your better ones, the Steiner matches that you had there? Or?
Yeah, the Steiners on the World War III.
Yeah.
I think what was,
pay-per-view.
And we had some great matches with the Booker T and his brother, Stevie Ray. Harlem Heat. They were great. They were good friends of mine. Stevie Ray was a good friend of mine. I got along good with Stevie Ray.
And did you guys just decide to leave and go back to WWE because you didn't feel you were being used to your fullest potential?
Yeah.
So Jacques made the call there.
Yeah.
You ended up going back to WCW during the Team Canada era for Lance Storm's Team Canada with Jacques. What ended up bringing you guys back to WCW?
Well, actually, we didn't know we were going to be back together. Sid got me back there because while I was in Memphis, WCW came for a few shows, and I went to Vince Russo, who I got a good relationship with him in WWF, and he now was the booker in
in WCW, and then Sid just arranged a meeting with me and Russo, and had the chance. And Sid also wanted someone to train with and travel with and things like that. So I worked my deal separately from what Jacques had been working, and they had already brought up Jacques before me, which he did the special guest referee in Vancouver, which was a great idea.
And it came off well too.
Yeah, with Brett. And then after that, I came into the mix, and it was the first time we arrived at the arena, and we were like not talking to each other for a few years, and start talking, this and that, and we ended up in a gimmick together by not knowing that we were both working on something on
you
both
each
sides.
didn't know.
Yeah.
So you were
No, he didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know he was going to be part of it until I saw in Vancouver that he was there, but I didn't know I was going to be part of his deal, or if we had separate deals or whatever. But I was seeing like Team Canada get formed. I imagined that I was going to be part of it, but I didn't know how it would work. But anyways, it didn't take long that Kevin Nash put the hatchet in that, I mean,
he was booking at the time.
Well, yeah, he had a lot of pulls, Had a lot of pulls, so
Jacques only made like 2 appearances, right?
Yeah, he quit right away. They asked him to do the job for Ernie Cat, Ernest
Cat Miller.
Ernie Cat Miller.
Who was Eric Bischoff's close friend or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He probably does the DDP yoga now. But anyways, he quit. He said, "No, I'm not doing the job for the Cat," because for him the Cat was a job guy, and said, if we're gonna go that direction, we're not going nowhere. So he left, and I gave it a try. I stayed a little longer, but eventually Nash got rid of me. Like, it's obvious. I mean, they put the strap on me, and then the strap was gone. Like. It was
that's when you had the WCW hardcore.
Yeah, but it was.
Is there any matches in particular from that era that you look back on with good memories?
No. Even when I dropped the belt to was the guy who was doing the dance
Norman Smiley.
Norman Smiley. Yeah, I dropped the belt to him. So for a hardcore guy, doing things like that, there's nothing hardcore there. So, I mean, I thought it was lame. The booking wasn't that great at the time. So.
Was it Vince Russo booking at that time?
Yeah, but he was kind of booking with a superstar tag team, I guess. Like everybody had his word there. Hogan had his word, Nash had his word, Hall had his word, and the Nasty Boys talking to Hogan. And it's free for all, even if it's, Kevin Sullivan was supposed to be the booker. Then it was Vince Russo. Then it was another guy. It changed every week, and you didn't even know who was booking anymore. And then it was just a free-for-all there. And the biggest thing that we did basically was to arrive in a big limo, Team Canada, and coming out of a big
I remember
limo.
that. That was in Kelowna.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You ended up getting recruited back to WCW at that point in time. I think they may have been, if not ahead of WWE, getting there. How did that process work when you jumped to them? I'm sure WWE may have offered you something at that time too.
Well, when I was in ECW, WWE didn't offer me anything. WCW did, and plus I didn't want to go back to WWE because I don't think they would have used me the way the way I wanted to be used, and so when I got to WCW, they used me really well at first, but then I just felt like it was my time to move up the card, and they didn't, there was 10 guys, at least 10 guys ahead of me, that had been on top for years that weren't stepping down. So, what are you going to do?
And I think you were one of the most iconic characters from that Nitro era.
Thank you.
Did you have much creative pull when they brought you in?
Yeah, they surprisingly, Eric let me, he said, you're the only person besides Hogan that I let have creative control over his stuff. Not full control, mind you, but let you come up with your own storylines. And then he had when Dusty came back, he had Dusty work with me in Saturn, so we could keep coming up with our own stuff. But I tried to be really smart about it. Like I tried to do angles only with guys on my own level or lower, because I knew if I asked for top guys that they weren't going to, they either wouldn't let me do it or I would end up doing a job at the end, and come out the loser, I'd come out the loser of the storyline, not the angle. Not at the end of the match, at the end of the series, I'm always going to lose because I'm the heel. But I didn't want to think I'd be able to come out as strong in the storyline unless I was working with somebody I knew, like DDP. So I tried to keep my angles with like Canyon, DDP, the Flock, guys that were, that they wouldn't have a problem with me shining the way I needed to shine, so I tried to be smart about it like that. But when I like the idea of me sitting in the stands, that was Terry Taylor's idea. That was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And I think that was also his idea to have me pass out instead of tapping to Benoit.
Now, is it true that the Flock would often get fucked up in the stands?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were drinking. We were getting drunk. One time we tried to call our ecstasy dealer, but he couldn't show up in time.
Was alcohol pretty much accepted backstage in WCW? We've heard the stories of Hogan having the garbage can full of beer backstage.
I don't know. Hogan's locker room was a whole, that was a separate locker room for Hogan and his buddies. No, I don't think people had beer backstage, but everybody was pilled up though,
How much control did you have over the members of the Flock?
I didn't have enough, because if it was up to me, they would have got wins. Like they used to, like Kidman would always complain. He goes, "How come you can't get us any wins?" I'm like, I try, and I go to Sullivan. I'd go, "Come on, give these guys some wins." And Sullivan would go, some have to die so that others may live. I'm like, yeah, but can't they? Do they have to be the ones that die every time? And he's like, and I didn't realize, like, Sullivan at the time was like, it was like he would do stuff like he would say to try and get me to come up with something on my, like, okay, like I come up with an idea, and so I find out, I get to the show and they'd say, and they'd call me in to give me the finish, and they'd say, "We need you to put over so and so," and I go, "That's a great idea, but because I'm doing this and this, wouldn't it be better if I went over and like that?" And so because of that, I didn't do a lot of jobs. Not that I was, and it's not that like they had a problem with it, because it was just asking logically. Like if I would have left and came, like Ken used to say, "How do you get away with that?" And I'm like, well, first of all, you can't leave and come back, because they'll just go, "Oh, we already sent it to the truck. Oh, we can't change it." I go, you have to come up with the idea on the spot, and you have to have a good fucking reason, a better reason than what they have. Otherwise, why would they change it? So I would always have to have a better reason. And then I didn't realize, but the Sullivan, like it became like a challenge. Like, and so me and him it was like a friendly competition to come up with ways of not me to not lose and him to get me to lose.
Now, as far as Van Hammer, he was a guy that seemingly had a WCW contract for years and years and years, never really went anywhere. What was your opinion of him? I know he's had his serious brushes with the law lately.
Yeah, I like Hammer, but I didn't want him in the Flock. I didn't want almost none of those guys that I want, other than Saturn and Sick Boy, because I wanted all new guys. Like I felt like if you give me retreads, people know they're retreads. Like Riggs, at least we did something to make him into a character with us. But like, and Kidman was fairly new, so that was cool too. But when they started giving me, and Horace was Hulk's nephew, so that was definitely going to be put. Jimmy Hart goes, "Hey, can you do Hulk a favor? put a horse in a flock. I'm like, I don't have any say in it, but absolutely, if Hoke wants it, that's fine with me. But like Hammer and Reese, no offense, like I like both of them, and I was glad for friendly purpose, social purposes, that they were in the flock. But I didn't want to pick them because they would just look like guys who were just getting a new act. You know what I mean? Like it was just, oh, that's a guy. Let's put him in that act because we have nothing for him. Whereas a guy like Hammer, I would have taken him off TV for a year and revamped him on his own. You know what I mean? Or find a way to repackage him. But you can't. I hated when they would just take a guy one week who was so and so, and the next week they'd repackage him and he'd be so and so without being off. A different guy without being off TV for a while.
John Tenta, I think, was the worst for that, and maybe Brutus Beefcake too in WCW.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, as far as Perry Saturn, have you heard anything about him lately? He seems to have dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to him lately. Like, we were in touch for a while when he surfaced, but when things aren't going well, he tends to disappear. And he doesn't want to be a burden to anybody, which is a shame because he's such a great guy and everybody loves him. But yeah, I gotta. In fact, the other day, my ex-wife's my best friend. Like we're closer now than when we were married, if that's even possible. And she was even saying, she's like, you got to call us. Yeah, she goes like, when's the last time you called Saturn? I go, like a month ago. She's like, did you hear? And I go, but he didn't return my call. Like he's really bad about returning calls when he's not doing well. She's like, you need to check up on him again. She's right. So I gotta give him a call again, at least a couple calls.
And I guess Steven Richard said in a shoot interview, I don't know if you've heard about this, that he felt you took advantage of him in WCW. Did you ever see that clip?
In WCW?
Apparently, according to this fan question, he said this in an RF video shoot interview.
I took advantage of in WCW?
Yeah.
He was only there for a couple of weeks, and then he quit.
I hardly even remember him from WCW. So yeah, I didn't see the clip myself. That was just a fan question. So there's the answer. You didn't hear anything about it. Now you had a match against Goldberg where he beat you for the U.S. Championship. Any thoughts on him? And I guess he was probably the biggest star WCW created from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a star. He had got a lot of bad advice. Like I've seen him since, in the last couple of years, not the last couple of years, but probably in the last 5-10 years. And he was very thankful to me for helping him to have such a good match. And he was very apologetic about not listening more to me, about like trying to get him to sell some and stuff like that. And he's like, I just had a lot of the wrong people in my ear. And I'm like, yeah, it's totally understandable, But no, I like Bill. I've known Bill for years. He's a really good guy. And I'm really proud of that match too, because considering his ability to work, I think I got one of the 3 best matches out of him ever.
Are you impressed with the longevity he's had recently? I think he was still champion this year. Not too long ago, he held the WWE title.
He's smart. Like he got away, and he became valuable again. And he and people people want to love the guy. He looks like a machine. Nikita Koloff was probably the first person to do that character. When Nikita was a babyface, same character, the jacked up like maniac, machine who looks like he could kill anybody. I'm happy for Bill. I'm real happy for him.
A couple of fans had this question. I don't recall it because it was obviously over 20 years ago now, but I guess you had a famous stare down with the Macho Man in WCW that I guess some fans felt there was more to it than just an angle.
Yeah, the only reason I even remember it is because I've seen pictures on Twitter of me and him staring off, and I think they just did it. I don't even remember exactly why or anything other than I think it was just a tease. I don't know. I don't think we ever had any contact. I don't think.
I guess you didn't hang out with him much backstage or anything. He seemed to be someone that would do his own thing.
Yeah, the really top guys all hung together, and then the Mexican guys hung together. me and Saturn and a group of guys would all hang together. It breaks down into cliques, into factions, just you get along with people you get along with, and it's always easier to get. It's also it's not so much a hierarchy, although it is, but you tend to hang out with the people you're working with, so if you're working on top, you're hanging out with the top guys, if you're working in the middle, you're hanging out with the middle guys.
I see. What did you think about his early passing?
Macho Man's?
Yeah.
I feel, I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. So many people pass young in this business.
I'm going to guess the Ultimate Warrior was similar to Macho Man. You didn't have much contact with him when he was back there?
No, not much at all.
So what was the straw that broke the camel's back for you to leave WCW?
I wasn't happy with the way I was being used at that point. I felt like it was my time, and I was also, self-destructive, which I didn't realize. And, I had demons and issues, which I did know about, but I just felt like it was my turn and I wasn't getting, and then Eric said, there's a door. I'm like, all right, there's a door. I'll take it. I figured I'd go to WWE at that point, but then Eric said, I'm not letting you go to WWE. And I go, well, you just told me there's the door. So, I mean, he's like, well, you can't go there. And then we talked some more that night. And then he laid out an idea that he had for me. And I was about to come back and say, I'll stay. But then when I found out that the extent of it, I was like, this isn't going to raise me any, it's going to leave me in a same or lower level, even though it was a good idea, though. It was a really good idea. But anyway, so I quit and then I went to ECW and then became a really big addict. My addiction got really bad, but then it also led me to getting clean.
And you brought up WCW. Your brother went to WCW for a brief time.
Yep.
They were throwing around a lot of money. Were you ever offered any positions with WCW?
Yeah, when my brother went to WCW with Pierre, some people were thinking, what about Ray? Do you think he might switch? I'd been approached by WCW. They offered to triple my salary to go to WCW. And I said no, and I said, don't call here anymore. And I went to Vince. I remember we were in San Antonio, Texas. My brother had just gone, and I had the offer. Yes, it's a small business. Word gets around, I went to see Vince, and I was always very close. I had a good relationship with Vince. And I said, Vince, I just want to let you know. I said, I was approached by WCW. I said, I know you're probably wondering, or people are wondering, his brother, when is he going to go? I was approached. They offered to triple my salary. And I said, no. And I'm not saying this so you could say, I said, you treat me very well. I'm very happy with that. But I said, I want you to understand one thing. We were in the basement. There were big, big pillars holding the building. I said, you see that pillar there? I said, I'm as solid for you as that pillar is to this building. I said, you never have to doubt about me on that. And he gave me a big hug and he said, Ray, I wish I had more guys like you. I said, you never have to worry about me.
And what do you think ultimately led to the end of WCW?
I believe, my thought, and it just got out, the guys, I think, were allowed to get out of hand with, first of all, the money just got crazy. There was guys were coming up with contracts, and if anybody else came in got more money than they did, then their contract went. I mean, you can only dip in the well so many times, and I just think the guys were allowed a situation, and then, like anything else in the business with the boys, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and I think they just, it's just, I think they started taking over the hen house, and you can't, I know Turner had a bunch of money, but once things started to get out of control, I mean, we were making money and the business was good and everything else, but it got to the point where it wasn't Eric's company. It was Ted's, and Ted lost controlling interest, and then once that happened, it just went down. That was I think ultimately, I think we could have still, if Ted would have kept control, because I don't know if anybody's ever, there's a story, this might be offline, but Ted Turner and his father were from Charlotte, North Carolina. They had a sign company. Well, Ted's father shot himself, and so the sign company was left to Ted. So Ted had his sign company, but he always wanted a public broadcasting TV company. Well, he bought one in Charlotte, and he went on the air one day and said, if everybody will send me $1, I can keep the show going. Well, Crockett seen that interview, so Crockett approached him about putting wrestling on his show to draw revenue and do advertising. Well, match made in heaven. Now we're doing TV shows on Ted Turner's TV. Well, then Ted takes it to the next level and goes to Atlanta and starts the Weather Channel and CNN. Well, the Crockett's got to a point where they got out of control with the money and everything and had to sell. Well, Ted bought it. He came back and bought it, and when he bought it, he brought us in and said, "You guys helped me out at the time. I'll always stand by wrestling no matter what. I sign your checks. You never got to worry about it. There'll always be wrestling as long as I'm here and in control." So that was kind of the backdrop for going to WCW. But the problem is when you get a board and you get other people, they didn't understand the business. And then, in 2000, he lost controlling interest, and then, that was the beginning of the end.
And did you still have time left on your contract?
Yeah, my brother and I still had a year left on our contract, so we were finished in 2001. Yeah. I did like 3 years of Japan wrestling, and then my brother went up to Vince and had another run with that, and it would have been nice to get another 3 years. Mandalay Bay was supposed to be the one that was supposed to come in and buy it. I don't know the particulars or anything, but it just never came to fruition.
Worked for Ron Fuller, and I was working a long program with Austin Idol, and then Bob said, "Hey, when you leave here," I said, "Oh, I sent a tape to Dusty, blah blah blah," and he says, "Oh well, I told Ole Anderson he was looking for somebody to be a transition champion in a tag as a heels after the Road Warriors, because what they did is you can't follow it, so we got to go we want the traditional bumping chicken shit heel, whatever, blah blah." I said, "Okay, I can do that." So Ole called me on the phone, and I just said, "Okay." Didn't talk money. He says, "Can you start this?" "Yeah." And I said, "Well," and I started talking. He says, "Look, Bob Armstrong told me you could do the job. That's all I need to know."
Who were some of the tougher guys to work with in WCW? We've heard some stories about some people like to rough up the lower talent.
I just know that a lot of times, well, here's a good story. You'd like this, because work son was Stan Hansen, and Stan was like a goddamn, he couldn't see very good. Hell, he couldn't see shit. But I was working a cage match with Ole, and we was beating him up in the cage. Stan was supposed to he actually bends the cage, you know what I mean? But one time for TV, I walked in and it had my name against Stan Hansen. I said, "Ole, come here." I took my pen out, scribbled it, said, "Fuck you," wrote his name in there. I ain't working with Stan Hansen. Are you kidding me? He might accidentally hurt me. Ain't no fucking way. But I worked with Vader and had a hell of a match and got him over, and showed all these guys, everybody was scared to death of him. He didn't potato me once. He did everything I said. It was great. But I had I'd been around, and the guys had confidence. I said, "Look, I know what you can do. I'm not going to make you look bad. I will do my best to get you over. I'm not paid to get over. I'm paid to get you over. I got no fucking ego. It ain't real when you win. It ain't real when you lose. I'm just blessed. I don't have to work at Walmart or McDonald's, and I'm getting to do this phony shit for how many years, traveling around, seeing the world, and that's all I ever wanted to do. Just, coach, put me in. I'm the last man in the NFL. Put me on the bomb squad. Let me protect the punter."
And at what point did you stop working for WCW?
Really, I was working for them in '95. And we was working Orlando. So some girls coming in, we were eating, and they was trying to pick up and hustle on us, right? So I went into a gay character and said something about her boyfriend, that I wasn't interested in him. I wanted a younger, more attractive man or whatever. And I'm just totally fucking ribbing, right? Then all of a sudden they'd be in a big fucking stinko about it. And Kevin Sullivan says, "Did you say that?" I said, "Well, hell yeah," I said. "You know I'd say that. Hell yeah, it's my goddamn routine. What the fuck?" They fucking fired me. And then once they did that, I basically said, "Fuck you." I don't want to go back there anyway now, just because you treat me like a fucking mark. I said, I'm ribbing somebody. I'm ribbing some fucking marks that are obviously trying to get attention or do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And we got some of the other boys trashing rooms, not paying for their food in Orlando, just walking by. You know what I mean? And here I am fucking ribbing, having a good time in a working way. But hell, today you couldn't say anything anyway.
No.
Fuck. And everything I say is against what you... Hell, if they had them phones in, I'd been fired in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Doing everything goddamn wrong. Did you do all this? Yeah. And people tell stories. Did you do this? Yeah. Did you do this? Yeah. Did you just... No, that's hell. They made that shit up. No, don't credit me with that. You know.
I think most of the big wrestling stars from the 80s and 90s would not have been able to get a contract today with the drug testing and cell phones. And they would, like Piper and Flair probably wouldn't have lasted because with cell phones, some of their antics would get out there.
Well, it's like in the wrestling business. Some people make one mistake, they get rid of you for 10 years.
Yeah.
Some people can do everything else and do everything that's worse, and they get away with it. It's the world.
Like Shawn Michaels, for instance.
It's all who you know, right? And that's the way the world is. Yeah. We know the world ain't fair. Hell, you're what, 6'4", 280 or whatever? Hell, I'm lucky to be 5'9.5", weigh 200 fucking pounds. You know, you're a real fucking shooter. Fuck! I couldn't beat my grandma. Get real. I was an entertainer before I was admit to being an entertainer, right?
Right.
I did my best, though.
Yeah.
But nobody said life is fair. Okay, how do you get booked? Well, you're related to one of the Samoans, right?
Yeah.
Or you're the something, you know somebody, this or that. You're on a reality show or whatever. You got some kind of notoriety. You're an ex-football player or whatever. But it's their business. They can do what the hell they want to do.
Now, I was talking to you about this earlier off camera. You had a couple of appearances in WCW on TV. You wrestled Alex Wright, and that was on Nitro. And then you wrestled Jerry Lynn at Halloween Havoc with the Sheik managing you. How did those matches come about?
Kevin Sullivan said one day, he goes, how much would it cost to come to our first Monday Nitro? How much would it cost to pay me? And he figured that was $1 back. I said, I can't do anything. I'm in Japan, I'm booked, I can't make it. He goes, how much to do our second Monday Nitro? And I said, you don't have to give me anything, just put me over. He goes, we got to give you something. I said, okay, $500. So we wrestle, it worked. They go, okay, you ready to sign a contract? I go, yes, boom. I go, wait, how much am I going to get paid? They go, what you said. I said, what did I say? They go, $500 a match. I said, you're kidding. He goes, no, that's what you wanted. 2 matches a month, 1 pay-per-view, 1 Monday, and $500 a match. I said, you're kidding. No, I want more than that. That was just so you look at me. Then we negotiate. They go, no, you're only getting $500 a match. That's what you wanted. Boom, boom, boom. So I quit, you know. And that was after, you know, Halloween Havoc and after 1 or 2 other Mondays. That's when I figured out that's what they wanted me to come in for, was $500 a match. I mean, what a miscommunication. And then they didn't want to negotiate, not at all. It was pretty bad.
And the Sheik got hurt managing you at Halloween Havoc too, I guess.
Yeah, when I did a flip out of the ring, I hit him on accident, and he slipped and broke his good leg. It was a hip replacement leg anyways, but that was like he had one leg that was bad, and then that leg, and then that one broke. Not broken too, but broke enough, you know.
Did it take a lot to bring him back to WCW in Detroit because he had that problem before?
Yeah. Plus, you know, Jim Ross and those guys, they didn't dig my uncle at the time, and I think they were working in the office there then.
Yeah, because before Kevin Sullivan told me he was the one that convinced Dusty to use the Sheik on, I think it was a Great American Bash tour in Detroit, and it had the biggest crowd. But
biggest crowd they had in years, and they didn't want to pay him. They said, we'll pay you next time. And my uncle doesn't do that next time stuff.
He said
I would have did it just because I wanted to work, but he wouldn't do that.
Kevin said that the Sheik, he had bet Dusty $500 that the Sheik would draw. Dusty didn't think he would draw. I guess Kevin won that bet.
Yeah.
So there was another...
The following month they came back without the Sheik, and it was down to 50% of what it was.
And how long after those 95 WCW appearances did they finally make you the big offer that unfortunately fell through?
I think it was 2000 or 1999. I think it was 2000. And that before they went out of business. They went out of business 1 year later. And I didn't sign this contract because I wanted to tell my mother about it first. And but before I could tell her, somebody seen me having a meeting with Kevin and J.J. Dillon, and they told Paul Lee. So Paul Lee threatened to sue, and they backed right off. Before I could tell my mother about the contract.
I had a substantial amount of money saved, and there was a point where we were at a television taping in Baton Rouge, trying to just recall the specifics. I had been off with, I had some blood clots on my knee and a few tears in my knee, and had to be off for 3 or 4 weeks. The entire time that I was off, Jim Ross, who was on the booking committee, kept calling me, and other people on the committee kept calling me at home and saying, hey, as soon as you can get back, we really need you back. And they talked, I remember specifically them all talking very, very badly, negatively about Sting and Luger. These son of a bitches make all this money. They cry about everything. They're, just really negatively. And they told me then that they were splitting me and Johnny up and were going to give me a big singles push. So I get back on the road, go to Baton Rouge, my first day back in a month, 3 weeks, a month, whatever. After these weeks of phone calls about this singles push, and I go to catering and sit my tray down, and Missy Hyde had just come out of the booking meeting, and she got her tray and she came over and asked if she could sit with me, and she sits down and she goes, Shane, I don't want to start anything, but they were really talking badly about you in that booking meeting. And I'm thinking, like, I just got back. How could they be talking negative? So in my head, I'm thinking maybe Missy got mixed up on something. They were talking about Sting and Luger or whatever. So, but it piqued my interest. So I left to go find Jim Ross. And halfway down the hallway towards where Jim Ross's office was, I ran into Teddy Long, who was just a referee at the time and had just started managing Mark Callis. He had a clipboard, like it was a boss or something. And Mark Callis was there with him, and he stopped and said, okay, Shane, tonight in segment 3 or 4, whatever the number, you're going to be working with Mean Mark here. 3 or 4 minutes, he'll take it with the heart punch. I went, no, that's not what I've been. I said, I'll be happy to put him over, but that's not what I was told. And he goes, well, that's what you'll do, or like it or leave it. I said, well, we'll find out. I went to find Jim. I went down and I found Jim, and I explained to him what Teddy had just said and reminded him what he had told me in these phone calls over the last month. And he said, no, that stupid SOB has it all wrong. And he said, go find Jody Hamilton. He'll tell you. So I searched the building for Jody Hamilton, and when I walked into the building, like in the Baton Rouge Centralplex, the dressing rooms are all like the old, like Hollywood days. They have the lights around the mirrors, and the little table in front, the partition off the wall for the counter. And I walked in the door, and I'll say if I'm Jody Hamilton looking into the mirror, I walk in over here, and he won't even look at me. He doesn't even turn to address me. He just keeps going like this, writing. And I said, well, I'm getting this, was told this in these phone calls. Missy Hyde told me that. Teddy Long told me this. Jim Ross told me that. This way, this way, this way, this way. What? Give me the lowdown. He threw his pencil down. Still never looked at me. He threw his pencil down and he said, you'll do the goddamn job to Mark Callis in 2 or 3 minutes with the heart punch, or you can get your ass the fuck out of here. Okay. He wants me to get my ass the fuck out of here, and I threw a garbage can at him, garbage at him. I was like, fuck you. I'd had it at that point of the politics. I'd tolerated it. At this point, I'd been around the business for 6, 7, 8 years, and coming from the UWF was not used to that kind of shit, and had tolerated it and tolerated it and tolerated it. To this day, I can't understand what the weeks of phone calls were to my house. It's one thing to sit there and say, let's play a rib on so-and-so. It's another to say, it's sort of demented to say, let's call him for weeks on end and tell him something and then get him here and do this to him. To me, if that's what you wanted from me, I'm under contract. If you'd have called me and said, hey, Shane, we come back, we're going to split you and Johnny up, we're going to job you out for a little bit and then start, no harm, no foul. It was, to be clear so everybody understands, I was never really the world champion. And when somebody beat me, they never really were beating me either. It was a work.
It's like an acting job.
Exactly. If the director tells me to take a bullet and die, I take the bullet and die. And but what upset me at that time then, and always has, is the absolute lack of ability of being a man to look you in the eye and say, this is what we want you to do. Lie to you, 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 then try to play tough guy with you. And I remember as I was walking out, I grabbed my bags and was leaving, and Tom Zank, who sadly just passed away, Brian Pillman, who sadly passed away several years ago, and Johnny Ace stopped me in the parking area, and they said, look, you walk out, they're going to fire you, you're going to lose your contract. I said, guys, I don't give a shit. I'm so far past this, boy. I'd had it like up to here, And Wahoo McDaniel came out and goes, kid, and he stopped me and goes, what the fuck are you doing? And I told him, he goes, you don't want to do that, kid, because you're going to burn a bridge. And I said, Wahoo, no disrespect to you, but I don't give a fuck about burning the bridge. I don't give a fuck if I'm not in this business anymore. But at that time, what they didn't know is I'd been talking, not behind their backs, I was talking to Pat Patterson just as a connection in the business, a contact. I'd never once asked him for a job. I'd never once asked him, hey, will there be a prospect for a job? It was just, hey, can you give me some advice, that kind of thing. And I got to Baton Rouge Airport to fly home, and all flights connected through Atlanta to Pittsburgh. So while I was in Atlanta for my connection, had like a couple hour layover, I called Eddie Gilbert to tell him what was going on. Because at this time we were hearing, again, you could never get a straight answer from anybody, but we were hearing rumors that what the office would want in Atlanta would be disseminated in the field at the tapings, and then the politics would take place there.
Right. Was it still Hurd running it in Atlanta at that time?
Yeah, it was still Hurd running it, but running it like on a corporate, more like the CEO.
Right.
Eddie Gilbert was more involved in the booking in the office. He was no longer going out to the tapings.
Jody Hamilton was on the booking committee, I assume.
Yes, and I wanted to make sure, before I did walk out of the company, I wanted to make sure that this, find out for myself, was the office aware of this? Because were these phone calls about me getting this big singles push, was that legitimate coming from the office, and now somebody out in the field pulling something else? And I called Eddie Gilbert, and Eddie said, yeah, don't fly to Pittsburgh tonight. Go check into the hotel, go see Jim Hurd in the morning, and make sure you clear everything with him. So I went the next morning. I waited for him to come in. He came in about an hour late, and I expected to have a fairly intelligent conversation with the guy. Instead, he starts talking down to me and saying, at one point we go in his office, he keeps on telling me, I'm making a big mistake, I'm making a big mistake. He never clarified what I was making the big mistake about, but then he said, I'm going to show you something. And he's leafing through his drawer, and he pulls out a piece of paper, and he hands it to me. And I reach for it, he pulls it back, and he goes, now, before I give this to you, I'm going to let you know, you probably won't be able to understand it, being that you're a wrestler. I said, I got 2 fucking master's degrees, you jackass. I can understand anything on this goddamn desk. And I looked at it, and he starts explaining. Sadly, the dumb wrestler that couldn't understand it keenly well, he didn't understand it. They had the WWF rating, and then they had, at that time, there were still like Portland, Memphis, Dallas. There was still a handful of the smaller territories. He had taken, and he had these 2 numbers circled. The numbers that he had circled was the WWF rating versus all of these ratings combined. So Portland added with Memphis, added with Dallas, added with this one and this one and this one. And they still lost by like 0.3 of a percentage point.
Was WCW included in that?
Well, it was the WCW number. I believe it was.
Yeah, so they would have been with all the combined.
Yeah, so and his argument at that time was, see, so we're not that far behind. And I said, well, if you circle this number and this number, you'll see you're light years behind. And at that point, it was clear to me that if this is the guy running this company, it's no wonder what's happening out in the field is happening, and they haven't got a chance of competing with WWF. And that's when I left, and I went to the airport. Before I got on my plane to fly to Pittsburgh, I called Pat, and Pat said, call me Monday morning, we'll talk then.
What led to you going to WCW as the Blacktop Bully after that? Just the empty promises of turning babyface?
Yeah, that was, I put my notice in. So then I was out of work for a while, and Arn Anderson, great friend of mine, and my wife's from Charlotte, so we went down to Charlotte, and Ric Flair was the booker in WCW at the time, and he says, Barry, I want to bring you in. And so Bobby Eaton, Arn, and myself were sitting in the garage one day, in Bobby Eaton's garage, having a few beers. And Rick says, I want you to be a truck driver. Think of a really good name. So we were sitting around, and Arn puts his glasses down. We're drinking a beer, and he looks at me, and he goes, you're the Blacktop Bully. I looked at him, I said, that's the greatest name I've ever had in my life. And I love the gimmick. It was great. We went to Rick, and Rick says, that's it, let's do it. And we started the angle with Dustin Rhodes and Ricky Steamboat, and and it could have went a long ways, but they ixnayed it, and I guess I wasn't the guy, but.
It was popular, I recall that. And what was the issue exactly? You had that unique match that took place inside of a moving truck.
Well, it was a big uncensored match, and Mike Grimm came up with the match. He says, hey, we're going to have a match in a flatbed truck with a cage around it. You're going to go on a 50-mile trip, and it's going to be the most brutal match, and you're going to win because it's your match, and that's going to be the match you're going to have every year. Well, they had the uncensored matches at an arena, so it was a live show, and then they cut away to our match. Well, somebody was saying, I don't know how true this was, but there was a few matches going on at the arena, and ours was, they went cut back and forth. Pretty soon they were booing the matches in there. They wanted to see our match. So I think it got a little bit of heat, but we were told to have quite the match where we were bleeding in the match, and make it the real, and it was the real deal. I mean, we were hitting the cages and blood everywhere, our backs,
So
the
is
whole
the rumor
deal.
false that you were let go because you bladed in that match?
Well, what had happened was when the whole match was done, both of us, me and Dustin, we were exhausted, and they cut out so much of that match, but anyways, I thought it was the best match I ever had. And then I had to drive from Atlanta back to Charlotte. Blood all over me, and the whole deal. And Dustin calls me up in the middle of the night, goes, Barry, thank you, and everybody loved the match. The next morning, I'm in Charlotte, and I get the phone call from Eric Bischoff. He says, Barry, what a hell of a match you had. And I said, thanks, Eric, and he says, I got good news and bad news. And I said, well, tell me the bad news. He goes, you're fired. I said, what? Fired? He says, yeah, you're fired. You weren't supposed to get any blood in that match. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I was told that we were supposed to have blood all over our bodies. It was an uncensored truck match in a cage, your match. And you're telling me I'm fired. He goes, yeah. And he says, please, he says, I really want you to leave on good terms. We've been friends, and I promise I'll hire you back. So he says, Dustin's fired and Mike Graham's fired too. So I said, well, are you going to fire the camera crew? Are you going to fire every single person that's involved? Because they could have shut the cameras off. It wasn't just our fault. He says, Barry, please. I said, Eric, if you don't want me here, I'm done. So that was the end of it. So we got fired because of that.
And just for the last question here, could you briefly go over, you were actually ultimately rehired, and I believe you did several different gimmicks. Do you want to just go over the end of your career there in WCW, your last...
everything's kind of a blank.
I hope you were paid decent at least.
Oh yeah, Eric brought me back, and he gave me a heck of a contract, and it was finally all those guys that were getting paid for doing nothing, that 100,000, 150, 200,000. I was finally one of those guys. It was like, holy cow! I'd go to TV and I'd say, please let me work. How can I work for free? I can't do this. And they'd say, no, just take the day off. So they'd fly me into TV, and I wouldn't even work. It was unbelievable.
That's why they're still operating.
But I got to hand it, Eric Bischoff, great guy. He said exactly. It was terrible. I got fired, but he told me he was going to hire me back, and he did, and he gave me a great deal. So,
do you think it's reasons like that ultimately led to their demise?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. There was guys making money so many guys that were making big money that weren't even working. And guys that were making big money that couldn't work.
Because this is a question I guess I have for both of you. A lot of people blame the Time Warner AOL merger, but if WCW had been profitable, do you think they would have actually kept WCW and it wasn't just that they didn't like wrestling?
Yeah.
I think the big mistake that they went through is they went head to head against Vince. If they would have been a regional, Mid-Atlantic, Georgia, Florida promotion, they'd still be operating now.
and based it on old school drawing versus pay.
Was like Crockett's territory.
Yeah.
I mean, we flew in private jets every night, and we'd come home every night. Yeah. I mean, that's not the wrestling business.
You can't do that.
That's why he didn't make
You
it.
can't bring in $20,000 houses and spend $50,000.
Right.
What really happened was I was, it's a tail end of my martial arts career, fighting in tournaments, and I would only make few appearances in some of the tournament, and I was competing in non-combative part of competition, which is called a form competition. And I had my health club and karate school here in Mason City, and one day I get a phone call from Eric, and he said, and he knows I'm a car nut, so he just bought himself a black vet, and he was driving home from work from CNN Center to his home in outskirt of Atlanta, and he's telling me all about his cars. Today I just got this vet. It's great. I said, yeah. I said, Eric, so what's going on? And he said, by the way, I'm trying to do some business in Japan. I said, you still speak fluent Japanese, don't you? I said, yeah. He says, how'd you like to go to Japan with me, next couple weeks? I said, sure. I said, long as you buy a ticket, I'll go. So, and even that time, he says to me, because Eric and I wanted to do kickboxing shows, bring the martial arts history of us back to television. So we had a few ideas of how we could do that, and we talked about it. So he says, as the meeting gets going, he says, there's an opportunity, and you'll know when I start talking about karate, then you can kind of cue in and, start talking about the martial art, doing maybe a kickboxing show. I said, great. So he said, I'll call you next week. So he kind of gave me a date that we were going to leave. And I don't know if Eric will remember this, but I'm thinking to myself, come Monday, Tuesday, God, I thought he was talking about us leaving on Thursday or something. So I finally called him, and I go, at his office actually, and he was always nice enough to pick up my call. And he says, yeah. And on the other end, the guy's busy, so he's trying to get you off the phone kind of situation. So I say, hey, how you doing? And trying to make small talk, and I can tell he was busy. And he says to me, he says, well, yeah, I'll talk to you, later on. And I said, well, before you go, I said, Eric, are we still going to Japan like Thursday? And he said, this was his classic Eric Bischoff. He goes, you're the guy I was talking to. I'll call you right back. And suddenly he called me back and he says, yeah, can you be here like Thursday? I got your ticket out of Atlanta and we can go. And actually, that's how I ended up going to Japan. Now, the best part of this story is that Sonny Ono have no idea about what's about to take place in Japan. So I'm getting a free trip to Japan, go eat some good food. Hopefully we can talk about our project of martial art, kickboxing. So not knowing anything that have taken place between WCW and New Japan. So we have a meeting with New Japan. And Eric says, look, don't worry about it. Don't say anything. If we get opportunity, we'll talk about the kickboxing. Great. So we go to TV Asahi television studio, and they had a conference room. And this is the first time I meet Riki Choshu who, you know, scariest looking big Japanese guy. And then you got Masa Saito, who's 64 Olympian, and most of, you know, a lot of the American wrestling fan knows who Masa Saito is, who just happened to pass away last week, who was very kind to me with all the thing about wrestling.
Not on that day though.
Yeah. No, I didn't know him. And, you know, he's got one lazy eyes, you know. So when he's looking at you, you don't know if he's looking at you and you don't know which eyeball to follow. But
and he was also involved in that. He wasn't there for when Ken Patera threw the rock through the window, but
yeah, but he got
when it
arrested.
came he was involved with a scuffle with the police after
Right,
that.
right, yeah, and he ended up doing time in Wisconsin, you know.
So he's a tough guy.
Oh, I mean, legit tough, scary guy. Then you got Mr. Sakaguchi, who was part of New Japan Pro Wrestling, who was he's about 6. He's a big Japanese guy. He's probably 6'3", you know. Heavyweight judo champion, and then we had Mr. Baisho, who was their financing guy. But these are scary looking Japanese guys, and I don't know if we were on the same level when we were talking. But what I remember, at least in my mind, that they were up a little bit up on a platform, and they were up here, and here's Eric and I. And Tiger Hattori, Mr. Hattori, their famous referee for New Japan Pro Wrestling, who still works with this company even to this day, who speaks fluent English because he's a Japanese guy like me, but lives in New York. So Hattori, as we go into the meeting, and mind you, I don't know anything about what took place between two companies. So first time I'm hearing this is the word that's coming out of Eric Bischoff's mouth. So Mr. Hattori says to me, he goes, "You translate." And I wasn't expecting to do that. I was just supposed to stay quiet. So I get put on the spot. So okay, and it's interesting thing enough, my Japanese is my 11-year-old Japanese, because that's when I left Japan. So, because in Japan, as in a lot of country, certainly in Asian country, people talk different with how they address people, and I address yourself against somebody who's older or senior. So it's a little bit different. So, with that, I'm translating what Eric Bischoff is saying to these Japanese scary guys. For the first time, I'm hearing and translating. So it turns out that prior management of WCW has taken upward of $500,000 out of New Japan, an agreement to do a talent exchange, to send WCW talent to New Japan for their tours or their shows.
And that's Bill Watts' regime, right?
I believe so. And unfortunately, reason why these guys look like they wanted to kill us and stick us in Sumida River, because none of these guys are really talking, right? I mean, they're just looking at us like, why you guys are here, kind of look. And turns out that as I'm listening to Eric and as I'm translating, that Eric is apologizing for the debacle of not sending any talent, and basically just took all their money and not sent the talent. And I'm hearing this and going like, oh, now I'm understanding why these guys look like they want to kill us, because I'm representing a company that took their money.
So Eric didn't give you any warning?
No, none. He gave me no heads up whatsoever. I'm sweating bullets. And basically, Eric was there to rekindle their relationship, or this relationship. And Eric's a pretty smart guy, and he says, listen, let me try to make that up for you, without you guys paying us, because you already paid us. So let me, under my regime, I'm in charge. Let me try to make up for the money that you paid for with the service that we promised you. So all of a sudden, Masa Saito says to me in Japanese, who is going to be our contact person? because the problem always has been is I will contact the office, and by the time I got an answer that we were requesting the talent, we couldn't make the logistic work. We didn't have enough lead time to advertise and a lot of other stuff. So there was communication was really issue. So without skipping a beat, Eric says, "Oh, that'll be Sonny." And I'm looking at him like, when did I start working for you? So, in essence, at that moment, that's how I got into wrestling business.
So what was your contract like for that job? Because I guess you didn't quit your businesses here.
No, and I said, afterward, Eric kind of whispered to me, and he says, "Don't worry." He says, "Look, all you have to do is answer the phone, tell me what they want, and we'll make it happen."
So you received like a yearly.
Yeah, and I think it was something like $18,000 a year to answer telephone and make sure this communication channel was open. And Eric was always kind enough that and they knew that Eric and I was friends, so he would always I'd be able to get in touch with the man in charge, and that was a big issue back then. So. And that's how it happened. Was with also there was a Brad Reagans who worked for New Japan, was dear all-time high school friend of Eric Bischoff, and he's the kind of try to set this thing, kind of rekindle this relationship. So with Brad and I working together, we got things done, and that's how the New Japan WCW relationship blossomed, to say the least.
Did you deal with any of the WCW guys that were being sent over there directly? Were you the one talking to them?
Yeah, because some of the tours that they would go on, I got to go on a tour with them. Randy Savage, Road Warrior Hawk, there was a few issues with those guys, and Ric Flair, and because they would do a big show, and our big guys would go on their big shows, Tokyo Dome shows and Osaka Dome shows and Fukuoka Dome shows. What people in the United States probably don't understand is that when Japan has big shows like the New Year January 4th Tokyo Dome show, you're talking about 30, 40,000 people in the arena, and that's in essence their big pay-per-view, kind of like the big show that we have here, and it's pretty crazy when you go to see it, and when you see a wrestling show with that many people.
Somebody recently sent me the WCW pay sheet from the later years of WCW, and I noticed on there you actually made more than Ric Flair.
Yeah, I never talked money, and I still don't. But I didn't even negotiate, to be honest with you. Everything comes the way it comes, and so Ric Flair. But Eric had plans for me, and when Eric left, I was kind of just floating in the ether, if you will, of professional wrestling. So I just was around, that's all. But the money is not a big deal. That was like a guarantee, and that was the difference between the WWE nowadays and the WCW then. They could give you a guarantee, and I made a little bit more money than that, but I'm not. That wasn't guaranteed. But just want to have fun, and that's one of my fun things to do.
And you weren't a bad pro wrestler at all. Who trained you for pro wrestling?
Well, I was at the power plant, and they bounced around. And, Paul Orndorff was always in his office, and he ran the whole thing. And when I first went there, they had all these power plant wannabe guys that are all in thing. As a very nice, like 6 rings in it, a weight room. It was a very nice place. And you know what? There's a few guys that helped me, and I don't even remember. Sarge, I was known as Sarge, little guy, short.
Yeah, I remember.
And they would help me, but they didn't really help me that much, and I just had to take it in through osmosis. And maybe I was a little stiff. And then I used to work with Norman Smiley, who is, he's a good guy. I still keep in contact with him.
He still works for WWE, I believe, training wrestlers there.
He speaks Spanish there. That's an inside joke, but I don't have time to explain it. But he works there, and we would be on the house shows and stuff like that. And I remember they videotaped my match, or not videotaped it, but they had TV cameras there. And I'm working with Norman, and he's like, whoa, bro, slow down, because I was twisting his head off. And I'm like, oh, okay, Norman. And then another funny time, I threw him on top of one of those heat lamps that go up the ramp to go into the stage in the back. And I was fighting everybody on the thing, and I threw him on top of one of those things, and it was burning a hole in his back. And he's like, going, pull me off. It was TV thing. He's like, pull me off of this fucking light. And I'm looking around, I'm going, oh shit. And I fucking drug him off of it. And then he's like, oh my God, when I got in the back, he goes, that thing, he goes, we're on TV. I couldn't do anything. And I was burning myself up. But Norman, in fact, just texted me a little bit ago. He's a good guy. He helped me out a lot. But a lot of it seemed like osmosis, and I'm not really too confident in my wrestling skills. I can tell you that I can digest them now. I look at a match completely different than when I first started. Like, wow, like the dick grabbing match with Shamrock. That was funny to watch. I don't consider myself a trained eye. I consider myself a somewhat trained eye. And it was a pretty funny match. But, I don't feel confident in my wrestling skills. But give me 2 months and being on the road, I think I could pick it up pretty quickly. I have a little bit more rooster on the side of that. I'm more knowledge to digest. Once you know the nuts and bolts of things, it's easier to put together. And that whole wrestling thing, that was a weird trip. Loved it to death, but just my situation, I was in limbo. No one knew what the hell they were doing at WCW, and I don't mean that like they didn't know what they were doing. No one knew what was going to happen and what was next and who was going to run the show. And then someone's running the show, and then 2 days later, somebody else is running the show, and they're like, where do you fit in this situation? And I go, hey, Eric's boy, Eric Bischoff, was the guy that brought me in, and so he had all these plans for me. And we all know that Eric doesn't work there anymore at the time. So
They should have made you champion because you.
I was supposed to be against the Sid. I don't want to talk about that stuff, but there was at least 3 or 4 times I was supposed to be, and I just tried to stay out of it all. It was not up to me. No.
Yeah, I think they ended up having Sid drop the title to Benoit, who left the company the next day. So that made so little sense. But it's typical WCW.
Then they said that Sid won because his foot was outside of the rope. And
yes, good memory.
Well, it was because it was tantamount to me. I then wrestled Sid, and Sid beat me with the crossface crippler thing or whatever. Like, ha, ha, ha. And I, you know, went there. It was in Minneapolis, and I was supposed to be leaving there with the belt, but it didn't happen. And to me, it just, I didn't want to get in the middle of any of that stuff. I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever you got plans. I wasn't like gonna go, why? What are you talking about? Why change of plans? I wasn't in the position to argue, so I wouldn't have anyways. But they had their plans and what they were doing. Just had a good time riding around on that motorcycle they gave me through downtown Minneapolis, Target Center, I think.
How did you like Sid as a person? Because he sometimes gets a bad rap, but anytime I've been around him, he's been a pretty nice guy.
I absolutely agree with you. You know, he's the first guy that kind of not befriended me, told me some knowledge about the business when I first got there, kind of opened my eyes. I should have listened more than I did, but he was just telling me to keep quiet about everything, and you're where you are in the position of this business. It's nobody's business to tell, you know, to know your business. And I was, you know, shell shocked. I was in Washington D.C. I think that's where it happened, and it was too soon, because it was. If he would have told me that a month later, I think things would have been different, but not really different. But I would have had a grasp of knowledge that I didn't. My ignorance was not so blaring.
Back at WrestleCon WrestleMania weekend here on the Hannibal TV, and this is unusual for me because this used to be my boss. He used to be the one that told me what to do, and you know him as the voice of WCW Monday Nitro, WCW Thunder. Heck, every WCW, they had to work every WCW program.
Yeah, that's
Saturday night.
Right.
But Tony Schiavone, welcome. You have a bit of a resurgence here with a podcast. Tell us about it.
David, good to see you, man. It's been a long time. Yeah, you haven't aged a bit. Yeah, we all have. Hey, so the podcast is a part of MLW Radio. It's called WHW, What Happened When. We go back and take a look at individual matches, individual pay-per-views in WCW with Conrad Thompson, who's really the brains behind all this. I just sit down and talk. So it's been tremendous. It really has. And we're really excited about it. We sell T-shirts. It's turned my life around, really. And now my only daughter is going to get married next year. I need all the freaking money I can get.
Yeah, exactly. I know at the end, I know personally at the end of WCW, you're pretty wiped out. You were doing all the shows. Plus, a lot of people don't know you were executive producer to a lot of those shows. So you sort of went off the different direction and didn't go back to wrestling. What brought you back?
Conrad brought me back. He sent me a long email in January, right at the first of the year, and he had everything planned out about how much money we could make, what we could do, and he wanted me to get back in wrestling. And I told Lois, you know Lois?
I know Lois.
Tells everybody.
Tell Lois I said hi.
I will. And I told Lois, I said, what the heck, let's give it a shot. And we did, and so now we're back into full time. It got me here at WrestleCon, and I'm going to make some other appearances. I really miss people like you, my friends in the business, I really do. And obviously it's great connecting with the fans here.
Let me ask you a question, because we were just talking to Bill D'Amato a little while ago, and he said that a lot of the bad memories erase over time.
Yeah.
What are the good memories you have back thinking of WCW and the Monday Night Wars?
Well, I tell you, a lot of them were the good memories I had were a lot of the cities and towns that we traveled in. If I go back and think, and you'll remember this, David, we were so fortunate to be able to work Disney World all those years and go backstage and do that. Those were some great times, and that's what I remember. The fans say, do you remember this match? Do you remember this match? Not really. It all kind of, kind of melds together. But I remember the people, I remember the good times that we had, And we were very fortunate back then in the 90s to be as popular as we were and be able to work with some pretty good people. Now, we work with some bad people too, and you know their names, but still mostly great people we work with.
Man, you care to mention any names?
I would not. I'm not going to do that. But you can tune into my podcast, and I won't mention all the names. No, I'm kidding.
I've heard. I haven't had a chance to listen yet, but I've heard that you're bringing Klondike Bill back as the national name. Do you have any Klondike Bill stories you haven't told yet?
I think I've told every story that I know.
Now, did you tell the story about when he doing the money grab on the baseball?
I haven't told that one.
Will you tell it to us?
Yes, I'll tell it to you. When this was like 1983, and I was working with the baseball team, and they had a money grab where they brought 6 people out on the field to grab play money, and they got cashed in for real money. Klondike, instead of littering the field with money, just dumped it, boom, right on top of the mound. 4 or 5 people went in, had these big band lawn shirts, and they got all this money. One person won like $7,500 that night. The baseball team had to shut down concession stands, had to lay off people because of all that money. And Bill said, "Hey, I wasn't told what to do. I wasn't told to dump it on the top of the mound. I just do what I thought was natural." I said, "Well, great job, Bill. Well, about 10 people are unemployed right now because of you."
I love that story. It never gets old. I have one last question, then I'll let you go. Was I a great employee?
Yeah, you were one of the best, David. One of the best. You were a great suck-up. You always
was a good suck-up.
Yeah, you always.
I admitted that when I did a shoot video for the Hannibal TV that I was a suck-up.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that. It always strokes the ego. But you were a great guy. I do need to say this. After we went down, I did work for you doing tattoos at the zoo in Atlanta, and I appreciated all that. And you're a longtime, close, personal friend of mine.
I say the same thing. What happened when? And be sure to check that out. I'm going to start listening. I'll have to make some time.
Yeah.
Life is busy, but I'm going to make some time. You guys be sure to check it out, and don't forget to subscribe to the Hannibal TV for instant updates of interviews like this with the one and only Tony Schiavone.
How did you end up in WCW?
Jim Cornette, Kevin Sullivan, and Eddie helped too. Eddie Gilbert got us to try out. Yeah. Jimmy was, in '87, the old Florida office, the Midnight Express come in. Stevie and I worked with them in St. Petersburg, Florida. Of course, Bobby Eaton then was just out of this world, great, but Stan helped train me, and Jimmy just a mind, and they made us look great. And then in there we got to come up for like a week to the Charlotte territory and got to work with them in Baltimore before the 1990 Great American Bash. This was in '87, and went good, and they were just great. We worked with them in Greenville, we worked with them somewhere else, and did, and we were supposed to win up in '87 after the bashes, and the territory was starting to decline. We were supposed to go up to the main roster to Crockett and work on the B shows with the Midnight Express. We got promised some things. The payoffs we got was good when we did this with Midnight up there in Carolinas and Charlotte. We worked on Charlotte, Greenville, Baltimore, and what we got paid was good, but Midnight Express got 3 times more than we got, and we walked out. We quit. And I was disgusted with stuff, and Steve was more missing home. We were supposed to went to TBS TV and got 4 wins. Didn't go. We didn't go. We got screwed because the B shows we knew they weren't putting nothing into them, and you were getting a minimum, but you were on the road, flying, traveling, and you didn't know, we got screwed a lot. And bad mistake. I followed Steve and shouldn't have done it. So young guys out there do not walk out. And that blew that. But and so we had heat with Dusty, because we didn't come to TV that day, and I didn't do it. But a lot of things didn't come through, promises, and and we weren't making money in Florida. They wouldn't do good unless they come to the big shows. When Dusty would come, he'd come with Road Warriors and Horsemen, Nikita, everything, and we weren't. And I went back to Tennessee. Steve went to Florida, but then we worked Continental there in '88, '89, then went back Continental again, and then Continental shut down. Cactus Jack had worked Continental, and he put in a word for us too, and he was in with them, and Kevin loved him. And we, of course, knew Kevin. And between Jimmy and Eddie, Eddie Gilbert, it's how we got a tryout with them. And when we went in there in '90, the tag teams there it was a who's who. Road Warriors, Steiners, Samoan SWAT team, Freebirds, Rock and Roll Express, Brian Pillman and Tom Zink were a team, so
Skyscrapers too, were they there?
Yes, and that was Sid and Mark Undertaker, because it originally was Sid and Spivey. Spivey went to Japan, he didn't give up his Japan deal, however that worked and did, and I can remember that because of. I guess there was a little friction with the Road Warriors and Skyscraper or something. You know what I mean? Or something. And I can remember that. I remember being at the gym with them, and Sid had that look. God, man, the guys didn't look like that then. And Undertaker looked great too, but he wasn't as cut like Sid. But he was impressive looking. They made Road Warriors look like midgets, as far as their height and just a big guy, but there's a lot of heat there, I believe. Might have been a little jealousy, with that. And Sid sound off, man. He didn't care. He didn't go off. I never seen it. Well, I don't know if you say that, but let's just say he could smoke some of the biggest cigars you've ever seen.
He doesn't hide that anymore. He doesn't care anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he doesn't care.
I've never seen anyone that can roll a blunt the size of Sid. He was a big 6'8", 3-something. He trained like a god. He Sid, back in, honestly, what I can remember, Sid, I remember him saying this, he would take in 500 grams of protein a day. That's a lot.
Yeah. Who brought you into WCW?
All right, here we go. We're in Ohio. I want to say, man, I'm going to Dayton Wednesday, actually. So we might have been in Dayton. We did a pay-per-view. Paul Heyman, I remember he paid me. My deal with Paul Heyman at that point in the company was I'm the highest paid player. Nobody makes more money than me. So Paul, being the idiot that he does, I think we were getting a pay-per-view check that night. Mine was like 14,000 and Sabu's was 15,000. And I found out about it right before I left for the show because I was driving to Cincinnati to stay there for a flight or whatever. I called up Paul. I left him. I told him I quit. Done. Because I knew in my back pocket that I could easily get a job in WCW. So I call up, it's like 10:30 at night or 11:30 at night. I'm by myself on the road. I quit. I tell Todd doesn't have much to do with the company here at this point or whatever. I'm telling Todd I'm quitting. He goes, no, you shouldn't quit yet. Next morning, I'm living in Utah. Oh, that was a Sunday. So the next day's a Monday. I had met DDP Raven took me to DDP's birthday party, one of his birthday parties in Atlanta. Me and DDP hit it off so well at his birthday party. His wife was pissed. Who was his gorgeous wife?
Kimberly.
Oh my God, what a gorgeous lady. What a nice chick too. But she was mad because he was spending so much time with me. And then, so I get DDP's number. I'm in Salt Lake City. I get DDP's number. Oh no, I didn't have DDP's number. I was going to meet DDP. This is how the story goes now. I find out I call Scotty and I find out that they're in Wyoming that night. And I forget what freaking town or whatever they were in Wyoming. And I'm in Salt Lake City. So they all fly Delta. So they had to go. I don't know this. I just booked myself a flight from Salt Lake City to whatever freaking town they were going in Wyoming. Casper maybe or something. So I'm walking down the stairs in the airport to go to the WCW show to try and get a job. I walk down and here's Rick Rude, who me and him were cool as shit with because he would ride with me whenever he came into the ECW. He was always in the Sandman van. He's standing there talking to to DDP. I'm like, yo, boys, what's up there? What the fuck are you doing here? Well, I was coming to get a job. I quit ECW. DDP looks at me and goes, dude, you told me like 6 months ago at my birthday party that you would never leave that company ever. That's what he said. I said, well, I don't remember saying that, but I'm done. I told him the situation. DDP's like, listen, give me a call tomorrow. I gave him a call. So that was Monday. So now I quit Sunday. Monday, I meet DDP at the airport. Tuesday, I have a ticket to fly to Atlanta to meet with Eric Bischoff. Wednesday I leave. So I quit Sunday. By Wednesday I had a job for $250,000 a year, like within like 72 hours. Wow. And sat home for 6 months making $5,000 a week. September 9th, oh, here's one. So I'll give you, I remember this date. September 9th, they sent me a $10,000 signing bonus. Then they sent me they'd make me go piss at some place. I was on the ocean in my house in Clearwater. I had to go piss fucking at some like hospital thing there that they had set up. Then I sit home till March like 6th. and get paid $5,000 a week to sit home and do nothing. They started, so the first thing they did, I was going to come in with Raven, and they were going to do something, but it was a little convoluted or whatever. And then luckily Nash gets the book. Nash gets the book on fucking on like Sunday. That's somewhere like in March, first week in March. Nash gets the book. JJ Dillon calls me the same day that Nash gets the book and says, "We want you at Raw Monday night." Not Raw, whatever the fuck they're doing. Yeah. So I had to go into Minnesota. It was in St. Paul or whatever the fuck it was. And he said, bring your stick. But I didn't have my stick in this in the things that we shot some vignettes with Raven at this house that they rented out with a pool and shit like that. Me and him were playing chess, and it was just stupid. I didn't like it, but they pay me $5,000 a week. I'll freaking suck their fucking dick if they want me to. That's my psychology. You know what I mean? Fuck. I just made $125,000 and did nothing. So I hated that. So I go into freaking so I'm in Minnesota. I'm the first person in the freaking locker room. Next person in the locker room, Sting. I introduce myself to Sting. He pulls out some cards, starts shuffling. And Sting's like the best freaking spade? Whatever the fuck game we were playing, like a rummy or whatever. 11 card rummy or something. I know how to play cards, but I mean, I'm not interested in that game. But I play him anyway, and I kill him. So Sting hates me right away because everybody's coming into the locker room now and they're seeing me beat Sting and freaking cards, and he's like one of the best dudes, so I'm sure he wasn't happy about that. So then we go into freaking, like 2 hours later, they pull me into room. Dusty Rhodes is in there. Nash is in there. Bischoff's in there, and a couple lackeys. Dusty gives me the barbed wire right then, and I'm like, "Oh, nice." He goes, "No, yeah, I wish I could do a Dusty imitation." And he's like, "Listen," he's like, "Oh no, feel it," and it was rubber. So those barbs were rubber. It was all. I've never used fake barbed wire. Anything else did was real barbed wire. Yeah, but that was fake barbed wire he gave me. And I'm like, "Oh, Dusty, you're the freaking best, dude." And then, so then they're like, "Well, you can't use the Sandman name." I'm like, "What?" I said, "Dude, I own the Sandman name. I can prove, you guys know this. I've proven that I've owned it." "Yeah, but we're worried about getting sued." This is what this little dweeb tells me. Their lawyer or whatever, little dweeb. The guy's probably a hotshot lawyer making like $1 million a year. He's telling me, "Well, we're worried about getting sued from a Sandman concrete company in California. Sandman, I'm like, dude, I am a wrestler. I am not them. It's a totally different thing." Lost my argument. So they're like, "Well, what are we going to do?" Well, what do you want to, I don't know, whatever happened. I'm like, "Listen, why don't I just go out there and grab the microphone and call Bigelow out, and you guys don't call me anything like I took over the show?" They're like, "All right," they like that. That was my idea. And so then the next week, I'm sitting in the freaking hallway. Nash comes walking. He's like, "Dude, they're not going to let you freaking use the Sandman. What do you want to be called?" I said, "Call me Hack then." Because I've had that name Hack. All my kids call me it. My parents call me it. That's been like my nickname since I've been 5 years old. My older brother gave it to me. So then that's how I came up with Hack, literally in a 30-second conversation with Nash in the hallway.
Now, they let you out of your contract, I guess, after a year. It was supposed to be 3 years. Was that just...
And paid me the rest.
Oh, you were paid.
Dude, I was making $5,000 a week with them. Because remember, the company went under less than 6 months later. They were trimming, fucking fired everybody. I mean, I probably deserved to be fired anyway. Oh yeah, because they didn't think I hurt my neck in that junkyard match, which was bullshit. I was hurt.
Everybody got hurt in that match.
They're fucking idiots, them dudes. They're just even me and Mikey were fucking on top, like we're on the stack of like 4 cars, dude. The helicopter's over top of us, and me and him are just cracking the fuck up, thinking literally I'm laughing fucking hard. That's just the whole scene and everything. It was just ridiculous, that fucking junkyard match. I was supposed to win that. But I showed up late for whatever fucking reason, and in the last minute they switched it over to Fit Finley. And then there's your karma for you. Fit Finley gets a gash in his leg like freaking, and ended up suing him the next night because Fit's not a hardcore dude. Fit's a worker, dude. Fit'll work your freaking, by seeing him work freaking, what's the name of these guys? Steven Regal and Fit Finley, I seen him work a pinky for freaking 20 minutes and get it over. A pinky. Fit, watch those guys, dude. Fit'll take 1, maybe 2 bumps a match. Same with Regal, dude. They're freaking great workers, dude. Fit didn't need to be in a hardcore match.
Jim Ross talked about this on his podcast recently, how he really didn't like that Oklahoma character. Yeah. I did a full interview with you a few years ago, and I didn't ask you about that, so I just wanted to ask you about that now, what the thought process behind that character was.
Bro, at that time, we were in an all-out war, bro. So it was kind of gloves off. Bro, Vince McMahon back at that time, like he used to do a JR impression behind JR's back. So it was twofold, bro. Part of it was that it was an all-out war. And the other part of that was it was kind of like a rib on Vince because he used to do the same exact thing. Bro, of course, looking at it now, one of the most hideous things I've ever done. I wish I never did. I can't take it back, bro. I mean, I have apologized personally to Jim Ross numerous times. Jim was totally cool about it, bro. Once I apologized, I mean, he accepted it and it was cool. But yeah, bro, obviously, no question, one of the things I regret. Bro, I don't put Jim Ross in the same category I do as a lot of people. Because one thing I could tell you about Jim Ross, bro, was he was old school, about as old school as they get. He was born, raised, bled professional wrestling, but he was not a politician, bro. Never once did Jim Ross try to stab me or Ed in the back or bury us to Vince or have an agenda. Never, ever once. If he didn't like something, he let us know. If he liked something, he let us know. And that's why, like, I always respected the guy and never put him in that category because he was old school, bro. But he was not a politician. He was not a backstabber. He was upfront, honest, and that's why to this day I have all the respect in the world for that guy.
So I guess you think he was a great acquisition for AEW then?
Oh, bro, before his contract was up with the WWE, I already knew he was under contract with AEW. I mean, there was no doubt about it. Bro, I worked with a lot of guys who were in charge of talent relations. I give Jim Ross all the credit all the time. Back in the Attitude Era, bro, he put that roster together. Jim Ross put that roster together, and he handed that roster to us. And every single person on that roster deserved to be on it. So there was no doubt in my mind, bro, like he was going to sign with AEW.
I think there's a lot of reasons, or a handful of really important reasons. The rest of them they're still important, but not as important. I think the 2 or 3 critical reasons. Number one is Nitro, WCW had been dominating, over-delivering, changed the business, all the stuff that I like to, tear cartilage, patting myself on the back, talking about. And then the audience got a little used to it. We satisfied them. They were happy with us, but there wasn't a lot new going on. There was a lot of decent going on. There was some very good going on. There was occasionally some excellent going on. But whatever it was, the newness of it, the boats got used to the high tide. Let's put it that way. Whereas over in WWF, things had been going all the way up until late 1997 when Vince McMahon famously came out and said, we're going to listen to the fans and we're going to change the way we're doing things. Well, that was Vince McMahon. Okay, fuck, they kicked my ass. Now I'm going to do what they're doing, only I'm going to do it better. When in late 97, when Vince recognized finally that he had to change the way he was doing things in order to compete with WCW, he didn't delay, he didn't hesitate, he didn't take small incremental steps. He went real fucking big. He went with Tyson and Austin. Tyson at the time was as hot as he probably had ever been, almost. The Stone Cold Steve Austin thing was emerging. When you put those two together, and then you put Steve Austin against the Boss, which was kind of a variation on what we were doing, all of a sudden now in WWE world, that's huge news. That's a massive shift. Just like turning Hogan was a massive shift for WCW in '96. That was a really big shift. When WWE abandoned their teen and preteen, creative psychology and embraced what we were doing in WCW with a more real, more honest, more believable kind of storytelling format, that was huge news to the WWE and huge news in the wrestling world. And a lot of the audience shifted to check it out. I did. I knew when I heard they were going to do it, it was going to kick our ass. Come on, Tyson, Austin, McMahon, come on. And that had a lot to do with it. They took advantage. Well, they didn't take advantage. They strategically revamped their presentation. Yes, it did follow our lead in a lot of ways. Doesn't matter. It worked really big. Well, at the same time, while that was going on, I'll just speak for myself. Kevin will have a completely different perspective of this, and rightfully so. But for me, while that was going on, in the midst of it, towards the middle of '98 now, early part of '98, we've got this AOL Time Warner merger going on. It's creating a ton of internal structural changes that, from the business side of the wrestling business, not the creative side, not the wrestling side, not what happened at a show, but the business of the wrestling business was changing dramatically inside of WCW and became much more difficult to manage. All of these things were happening at the same time. In my case, personally, I will admit to losing a lot of my focus when it came to the shows and my contribution as far as, okay, what's our show? What does it need to be? Where are we at? What's a weakness? What's an idea? Kevin, help me out here. Where are we? How can we do this? There was a lot less of me in that process starting in about '98, and I could see the handwriting on the wall. So I think it was a combination of WWF waking up, dramatically changing their format, taking a massive risk with Mike Tyson, who, by the way, was a convicted rapist. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge Mike Tyson fan. I'm talking about, let's look at the context of the times. Can you imagine if WWE were to try to do that today? Can you imagine? It would not happen. It would not happen. You might not survive a creative meeting if you were to even bring it up as a suggestion in today's environment. But it worked. It worked back then. So it was a combination of a lot of things.
Needed him, and I thought it was a great acquisition.
Thanks again to NWO Wolfpack TV. The top drawing WCW champion was Kevin Nash, who averaged 18,855 fans for his reign. The second top drawing champion was Sting. He averaged 10,448 fans for his reign. By the way, I'm telling you guys the top 15. Bill Goldberg was number 3, just under Sting's 10,103 average fans at the house shows, TV tapings, and pay-per-views he was at. And by the way, it was Sting's 4th reign and Kevin Nash's first reign. Kevin Nash's first reign was number 1. Sting's fourth reign was number 2. Bill Goldberg's reign was number 3. And that was Goldberg's first reign. Ric Flair's sixth reign is number 4. 10,023 fans was his average. Kevin Nash's second reign was number 5. 9,803 fans. Hulk Hogan's third reign was number 6. So Hulk Hogan only clocks in at number 6 here. 8,759 average fans. Dallas Page, number 7 for his first and second reign. 8,235 fans. Hollywood Hogan's second reign is number 8. 6,798 fans. Booker T's third reign is number 9. 6,216 fans. Sting's sixth reign as WCW champion is number 10. 5,882 fans was his average. Hulk Hogan's sixth reign is number 11th. 5,827 fans. Ric Flair's fifth reign was number 12. 4,337 fans average. Sid Vicious, who a lot of people say wasn't a draw, but he did pretty well here. He made the top 15 WCW, his second reign as champion. 4,254 fans, which was actually less than his best WWE reign, which I recall was in the 5,000s. Randy Savage's second reign was his best WCW reign, 14th best overall, 4,062 fans. So Randy Savage, I think, was number 4th or 5th for WWE, and his average in WWE was much higher. And finally, Bret Hart is number 15. They've combined his first and second reign here. I guess they must have been close. 4,036. Either that or his first and second reign drew the same. So Bret Hart is number 15, earning his $2.5 million a year there that he got in WCW. I'll go into some of your questions here. Wow, Hogan is down. Aiden the Daydreamer says. Ralph Vaquero is not a fan of Hogan. He says he sucks. Connor Haratham says, I heard Kim Jong had a bad surgery tonight and is either dead or brain dead. No, nothing about that. He has something to do with North Korea. Amos says, what about Vince Russo's reign? I only have the top 15. I think Vince Russo is full of himself, a mess says. Paul Chrissy says Bret Hart was overpaid. Paul Chrissy says WCW got screwed for so much money. AJRX, what was that ranking about? It was the best drawing WCW championship reigns. 1 to 15. I only did 1 to 15. Kevin Nash was first. Bret Hart was number 15. So there you go. And for Kevin Nash, by the way, his first reign was first. And Bret Hart's I'm guessing they said his first and second reign are tied at number 15. So I'm guessing that means Bret Hart's first and second reign as champion drew the same amount. So there we go. Someone says it's sad that Bret Hart was so unpopular in WCW. Yeah, I think he was just lucky that WWE gave him a push when he did, because if you look at Bret Hart's first reign in the WWE, he did have some later high-drawing reigns, but that was during the Attitude Era. But when Bret Hart was first champion in WWE, his reign average was just over 3,000 fans. So in other words, that's why they tried to push Lex Luger so hard, and that's why they gave Hogan the title at WrestleMania 9, probably. So there we go. Paul Crystal says it's sad that Bret was paid $2.5 million a year. Well, It's funny for all you Bret Hart fans that say he was screwed. He made very good money in WWE. He had 3 years of $2.5 million a year reportedly in WCW. Then, despite saying he would never go back to WWE, he was in a feature match at WrestleMania against Vince McMahon. He was a regular on SmackDown for a while, and he still makes appearances. So Bret Hart has made a lot of money wrestling and in merchandise over the years. So there's people that have been screwed far worse than him. For instance, his nephew, Davey Boy Smith Jr. Anyone remember how they got rid of him the first time from TV? By having Bradshaw come out there, insult his dead father, and then basically squash him. I think that was a little worse than how Bret was treated for the company. Anyways, thanks a lot. I'll check in with you guys tomorrow with another daily news update, and I'm about to post my full 2-hour plus interview with Val Venus on this channel, so I highly suggest checking that one out. I also did a compilation video on ravishing Rick Rude, his death anniversary was today, so that's going to be posted tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us.
Hey, are you ready to take your audio game up to the next level? Do you need post-production help in cleaning up your mixes or enhancing the audio for your videos? Or maybe you have a podcast and you need some help making it sound a little bit more professional. Or maybe you want to launch a podcast or a YouTube channel for the first time ever. Or maybe you need original music for an intro or outro. I'm here to tell you that those are possible. You can have your own podcast. You can have a good YouTube channel with good sounding audio. I am here to help. I have a very public email, LandonBumgarner@gmail.com, or hit me up on social media at LandonBumgarner on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and SoundCloud. Let's make your goals happen.